Oh, what the heck? What? Where am I? Where am I?
Yo, dude!
Huh?
Gary? Is that you?
Gary's my favorite pet. He's truly the only one that understands me.
What are you talking about, and why do you sound like that?
Don't you understand yet? I'm the very thing you and Matthew cannot bear to stand.
Gary, I honestly think you're just mentally ill.
Silence! Remember how Matthew called you about that one day, about the Blu-ray that gave him a wet willy?
I don't know where this is going.
Because of people like you, Matthew, and millions of people, I'm forever cursed with scarring many 90 kids and fans alike. I was just created to be a silly, fun movie for kids. But everyone bashed and despised me, and now I have to stick with it. But then comes Gary, my sweet, loyal friend, Gary. How Gary likes to say, unlike you, popcorn munchers, he understands what true films are, and not how every film needs to be taken seriously. How sometimes you can just have fun, or movies like me can be made for fun. I discovered, Gary, when you film virgins treated him with disrespect. He defended me, calling me an underrated classic. That's when I decided I gotta take him under my wing. When my supernatural powers combined with him, we can get rid of critics like you and Matthew, along with all the negativity I have to deal with for the past 31 years. You don't understand. I am the Ninja Turtles. No other one compares to my likeness. And to make sure that people watch me, I'll...
Gary, what did you do?
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cinemore. Today I'm here always with Matthew,
What's up?
but also we have a guest this time. Give it up for the voice of Gary himself, Taylor.
What's good, everybody?
What's
How
good?
y'all doing tonight?
And today we are talking about, as his master didn't give it away, we are talking about horror films. Just the history behind horror films.
There's one in my hand that's invisible.
Yes. Also, you got the mask, so brownie points. But anyway,
Yes.
I've been wanting to do this review for a while, like ever since episode 1. Like I've been wanting to do a horror film one, cause Matt is a big horror fan, Taylor is a big horror fan, as you can see. So before we get into like just tear all a bit about horror films, I want to go around and ask you guys like what age did you guys get into horror films and what was the movie that got you into it? I'm gonna start off with Taylor.
Probably, I can't really say exactly when, but I would always go to the movies with my dad on Saturday. And that was a tradition I've had since I was young. And He would often take me to see horror movies, and so this was around like I guess 10 years old. I can't really remember the earliest horror movie that I've seen. I can't remember that at this exact moment, but like the Saw movies, are probably like the first real horror like series that I got into, and I was like 9 years old, like some ridiculous young age like that. So something like that. So Saw, I guess I'll say.
I mean, I think for a lot of our generation, like the millennials and the Gen Z, we will get into Saw in a little bit, but I feel like Saw was definitely a lot of people's like first horror series around our age. But what about you, Matt?
Okay, so I think the first ever horror movie I saw when I was very, very young, I would say I was like a toddler around the time, was Eight Legged Freaks. It's basically a crappy movie about giant spiders like going to like a town and killing people. It's one of those crappy like CGI 2000s movies, but that was the one of the first horror movies that I ever saw. And my family actually told me a story about how they accidentally turned on the movie and they thought I was going to get scared. But I ended up laughing. I ended up laughing my ass off at the movie because there was a scene where like the spiders started like killing a bunch of bikers, and my like 3, 4 year old self was just laughing at that. But anyways, but besides that, I didn't really get into horror movies until I would say around maybe like 12, 13, or maybe 11. Like I've heard about horror movies on and off when I was a little kid, but there were times where I was just too afraid to watch them because like when I was a kid, I didn't really like things with blood in it. But once I got a little bit older, I started to, just kind of, I matured enough to be able to handle things like blood and guts. And also, what really helped me with watching these horror movies is realizing, hey, this is all fake. And eventually, I started watching all these like horror movie like YouTube channels, like Doctor Wolfley. Doctor Wolfley. I probably butchered his name. Do you guys know who that is?
No, I actually haven't.
Uh,
There
I
was
haven't
another
heard.
YouTuber I got most of my horror movie interest in, but I'll get into him in just a second.
Okay. But yeah, now besides Doctor Wolfula, I checked out a bunch of other like like growing up, I watched like so many like YouTube channels that talked about weird, obscure movies. A lot of those movies they talked about were horror movies. Like for example, Cinemassacre. I'm pretty sure all of you
That I
watched
was just gonna bring
Cinemassacre.
him up. That's how I got into most of my horror movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Another
how I got. That's how I got into video games, like and movies in general, but specifically horror movies, like as of the last few years, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, another YouTuber I give a lot of credit to when it comes to like helping me learn about all these weird obscure horror movies is Brendan's Cult Movie Reviews. He's a phenomenal YouTuber. I still watch him till this day, and also I still watch Wolfie till this day. So I credit those three YouTubers for getting me into horror movies, especially Dr. Wolfie. Like if you guys are really big fans of anything horror, the history of horror movies, go check out his channel. But anyways, now the first ever horror movie I saw in the theater was this horror comedy that came out in 2015 known as Krampus. I was 12 years old when I saw this for the first time. And yeah, I really like this movie. It's a fun, dumb, Christmas horror movie. And yeah, I think this was like an appropriate film for me to watch. This appropriate for me to watch at the time because this was like PG-13 and I was like 12 at the time. So, well, technically, maybe I shouldn't have gone in the theater to see this, but whatever. But yeah, so from watching all these videos and slowly getting into like horror movies and becoming interested in them, I started to, start watching a bunch of horror movies and, also collecting horror movies. And yeah, so that's how I got into horror. And also before I let Braylon start, I want to show you guys something really cool. So there's like a horror movie out there. It's an independent horror movie called Abraham Lincoln versus the Zombies. You see, there's like local events at my at my hometown. Sometimes where people from independent movies will come and like sign shit. And my parents ended up finding the guy who played. I think he played Abraham Lincoln or someone in the movie. I'm not sure, but yeah, I had this for like many years. This right here, a signed autograph from the guy.
Nice.
Oh, I have one more thing. Let me see if I can get it out. from here. All right. Yeah. Also, in 2016, there was a Walking Dead event that was going on in my city, and they actually got one of the actors who played the zombies to the event, and she signed this right here.
Nice. Oh, Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I was actually gonna bring that up in just a second.
Yeah. Now I will admit to you guys, I could never get into The Walking Dead. Like I tried
Me
watching it
neither.
like
Nope.
years and years ago, and it's like when it comes to like zombies, it's just I don't know. It's just sometimes the premise can just get a little boring for me, but
Yeah.
it probably just off a lot of like Walking Dead fans out there. But maybe
Yeah,
one day I'll get into.
because I actually was gonna get into how I got into the horror series, because just like Matt, I was always kind of scared, especially with The Walking Dead, because my parents used to put on The Walking Dead. Like, you gotta remember, this is like 2010, 2011. I remember I walked into my parents' room when they were watching The Walking Dead. I was fucking terrified, bro. I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And then that's why it took me a while to get into horror movies. The most horror I got as a kid was probably Goosebumps, but I think a lot of kids got into Goosebumps, like with the books and the show and all that. That's the most horror I
Oh,
really got, but I don't even think that's really horror. I mean, it's I guess technically it's horror, but it's for kids, right?
oh,
I didn't.
I forgot to mention that. Goosebumps is also what got me into horror. I love
I
Goosebumps.
still
That show's
owns
awesome.
like some VHS. I probably have
That's what
VHS tapes
probably
of it.
that's
Yeah,
what
I
probably
still
got
have.
me into horror, like mainly like Goosebumps as a kid. I collected the books and I saw like the show like
Yeah,
whenever
I
it was
saw the
on.
movie
I
in
saw every
theater. I saw the
episode.
movie in theaters. That one, it was
Saw the
alright.
movie in theaters. Saw both of the movies in theaters. I did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see these
Yeah.
Goosebumps DVDs. I fucking love
I
Goosebumps.
love
R.L. Stein.
Goosebumps. That was the
Me
most
too.
horror I got into, was just R.L. Stein. Now, when I started really getting into horror actually wasn't until high school. Once I got into high school, my dad wanted me to watch Halloween with him, like the original, because that he freaking loves that movie. I watched it. I'm like, you know what? It's an old movie, but it just has such a charm to it. Just like there's something about seven, like I'll bring it up, but movies like Texas Chainsaw and Halloween kind of just have that charm to it that you don't see with a lot of horror movies these days. Because that's my thing with horror movies. Like I love horror movies, but I'm not a big fan of like the current day era. I feel like a lot of the slasher movies you see these days, a lot of them are kind of just like the same old shit. But back then, like
Pretty bad, yeah.
when slasher was still like a new genre, it was awesome. I mean, you had Texas Chainsaw, you had Halloween, you had Nightmare on Elm Street, which is also one of my personal favorites. Like because of movies like that, that's when I really got into it. And then eventually I started watching movies like Silence of the Lambs and all that, that's a fucked up movie, but it's really, really good.
It's
I
good.
just saw that for the first time the other day. My aunt came over and my mom and I and her all sat in the living room when we watched it, and I thought it was really good. I loved Anthony Hopkins' performance in it. It was very such a profound, great, and like well acted, well produced, well filmed movie.
But yeah,
Liked
I
it.
would say for the most part, I'm more of a recent horror fan. But Goosebumps, though, like I love Orelstein. I think he's part of the reason why most kids got into horror to begin with. Honestly,
Mhm.
Definitely,
like
yeah.
Yeah,
Say Cheese and
definitely.
Die is still my favorite Goosebumps novel, but I can go on and on
That
about
and
it.
his other show, Haunting Hour,
I remember
also
Oh,
that
got
too.
me.
yeah,
That was great.
I watched a
That
lot
got
of
me.
that
I
too. That was
That got
really
me through
good.
middle school. I would watch that like
Yeah,
every
that got me
Halloween.
through elementary.
yeah. Now, when I was in elementary, that's when I watched like a ton of Goosebumps and Haunted Hour. But around the end of elementary and into middle school, that's when I actually got into like real horror.
Real horror.
So I've been a horror fan for for a very long time, and also it was because when I was in middle school, I was an edgy kid, so I thought, oh, watching all these horror movies, you know, is cool,
No, Goosebumps
But
was my shit. Like I can name like all of them. I still have some of the books somewhere. I need to find them.
oh yeah, I remember reading this one Goosebumps book about like a kid eating some kind of like sandwich or something. I can't remember, but he like it's like a choose your own adventure book. Like there's one part of the book when he turns like really small and he becomes a slave to like his like little sister's like Barbie house or something. And there's another ending of the book where he like becomes giant and he becomes someone's experiment. It's weird, but I will say this. R.L. Stein is definitely like Stephen King for kids.
Oh, I
He
mean
def-
that's his nickname. I mean, Like R.L. Stein is obviously the king of horror when it comes to his film and book, but when it comes to kids, R.L. Stein is the king of it. I mean, think
Oh
about
yeah.
Goosebumps. I mean, the books, then the show. And I've watched pretty much all episodes of the show. It's a great adaptation of the book. Like you watched the Haunted Mask episode of Goosebumps. That shit scared me as a kid. I'm gonna be honest with you. When that girl started getting taken over by the green mask, I thought that shit was creepy.
Oh
Another
yeah.
thing, another thing that really entertained me as a kid and got me into horror was like watching like creepypasta videos and like Mr. Nightmare, who's like a
Mm.
YouTuber who like reads submitted horror stories of real like horrific events that happen to people. Like I that's also what really got me into
Internet horror was a big thing too,
internet
especially with
horror as
stuff
well, I
like
guess.
Five Nights at Freddy's and stuff. I was a big FNAF kid when I was a
That
kid.
too. Like,
Same. I love FNAF, and also creepypastas. I'm glad you brought that up. As a kid, I got okay when I was a kid. I got scared of the most dumbest shit. Like I was absolutely terrified of Sonic.exe when I was younger.
I mean,
And I was
the
scared.
thing that petrified me was Squidward Suicide. That thing scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, yeah.
I was scared of Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E.
Chuck
Cheese.
E.
Did you read the
Cheese?
Yeah, the
pasta?
creepy pasta. I thought it was gonna come to my window. The fucking
I read
I
animatronic.
know
that as
that
a
one.
kid. But yeah. Oh my gosh. And like, okay, whenever I listen to that, whenever I listen to an audiobook for the creepypasta now, like it's so dumb, but it's so entertaining, you know?
Like creepypastas, I
Uh
mean, now these days are kind of just stupid, but there's such a charm. Like they are such early 2010s like horror crap. It's great.
Also some of the original creepypastas like Jeff the Killer, I remember that kind of scaring me, and Slender Man. Now that scared me as a kid.
Slender Man. See, that was like our generation's boogeyman, pretty
Jeff
much.
the Killer was that scared the shit out of me too.
See, I never was scared of Jeff. I'm gonna be honest with you. I always found Jeff to be kind of just dumb looking, but Slender Man,
Yeah.
I was scared of Slender Man. I was scared of going to the woods sometimes when I was a kid because I thought he was gonna come out and get me or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you could have been stabbed by two girls who thought he was real, but
Oh my god. Oh my god.
ah, okay, bad
Oh,
joke.
that's great. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you're not wrong. You're not
Like,
wrong.
anyways. So yeah, Slenderman was definitely like really scary. I remember watching all the Slenderman Let's Plays like from Markiplier, and also like I remember watching. You guys probably don't know about this, but I remember watching like these two people who pretending to be like Sonic and Knuckles play Slender. Now
Yeah.
those videos are pretty nostalgic. I can't remember what their names were, but yeah, that was nostalgic. Yeah, but internet horror, it like I would say Goosebumps, internet horror, movie reviewers on YouTube are definitely like the three biggest things that got me into horror.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. But I guess now
Yeah.
since we kind of got into like how we got into horror, so for this video I wanted to go over like the different eras of horror movies, but I didn't really know how to do it. But thankfully, Matt has this picture. I'll pull it up right here for each era of horror, from the silent era all the way up to the modern era. What's the modern era you gave the nickname for?
Personally, I like to call the modern era of horror the psychological era because I would say ever since Hereditary came out, well, I know there's like movies before Hereditary that done like psychological horror, but I think Hereditary is kind of like the horror movie that kind of made it like the standard. So yeah, so that's why I like to call this era of horror the psychological era.
Okay, but I guess since we know that now, I guess you guys want to start off with the Silent Age, which is from the 1920s to the 1910s to 1920s.
Yeah, I'll definitely like to talk about that. Taylor, do you want to start?
Um, the first movie that I can think of from that era that is Nosferatu, which is one of the earliest, or I think the earliest, like depiction of Dracula on film. And I'm
1927.
like, I'm very fascinated by the Universal horror movies and monsters and all of that. I watched it. I don't know, like if it was like the original version of it, like it was on film, but like the audio, there's no audio because it's a silent movie. But like there's supposed to be like like a score in the background, some music, and it was like the right era of music, but it was very like upbeat and off, and it kind of just like made the vibe of the film just like off, and the movie was like near like the whole like end sequence is anticlimactic. The only really cool part is him like on the boat when they're like shipping him off, or like when he's climbing up the stairs. I think those are the only two cool scenes, but I'm not really a big fan of it. I'm much more a fan of um Dracula from 1931, and also another good movie from the 20s. Or I don't know if it was from the 20s. I think it was from 1920. Is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a very interesting movie with I don't know. It's kind of it has like a warped like mirror type like I don't know what the word is. Like vibe to it. Something with the lens. It's very interesting. It's hard for me to describe, but just like if you're interested, just look it up and you'll see. It's very abstract and yeah.
I've only seen Nosferatu from the Silent Age, but you can definitely tell. Like, obviously, we're talking 100 years ago, almost 110 years ago. It's pretty much the caveman era for motion pictures in general. I mean, like I said, Nosferatu had no audio. I mean, most of those movies did. I mean, it's called the Silent Age for a reason. But what about you, Matt? Any ones you have in particular besides Nosferatu?
Okay, well, I do want to talk about Nosferatu for a little bit because I do remember getting really into the history behind that movie when I was in the 11th grade. I still remember watching the whole movie in school because they didn't block it on YouTube for some reason. But yeah, I want to talk about what Taylor was talking about earlier about the version he saw. There's tons and tons of different versions of Nosferatu, and also, by the way, Braylon, if you want to show like clips from Nosferatu or Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, you can show it because they're public domain.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
they've been public domain for the past couple of years now, so you could just pull it
yeah,
up right here. But go on.
yeah. Yeah, they've been public domain for years and years. So yeah, but I would say if you want to watch Nosferatu, the best version to watch it is the Kino version. The Kino version has the original score. It has the original like coloring because it wasn't just black and white. It was yellow and blue to kind of represent day and night because they couldn't film at night because like it was just the kind of cameras they were using. It was just way too
It's too
dark, you
dark.
know. Yeah,
Common
but
has this like tint to it. That's
yeah,
the
and
Nosferatu.
I'm pretty sure most people know Nosferatu from the episode of SpongeBob. You know, when he turns
Yeah.
off.
Nosferatu. That was my introduction as a kid. Just
Then who was flickering the lights? Nosferatu!
watching a Nosferatu.
Yeah, but another interesting thing about Nosferatu is it was a German unauthorized adaptation of Dracula. They didn't get the rights to use, the character, like the names for Dracula, so they were like, okay, let's just like in the book, Dracula is actually like a decrepit old man with a mustache, which is honestly kind of creepy. But
Yeah.
in the Nosferatu, like in order to make it different from Dracula, they decided to make him like bald and make him look more like a monster, which I thought that's a way better depiction of like a vampire in my opinion.
I agree. When
Yeah,
I
but
think of vampires, I think of a monster. But
yeah, yeah, okay. And eventually they actually got sued by Bram Stoker's widow because, well, it was an unauthorized version of Dracula, even though they changed the names and, made the character look different. She was like, yeah, this infringes on my husband's work. So she ordered every copy of the movie to be destroyed. And the reason why we're seeing it today because tons and tons of pirated copies went to the U.S. and it was actually a literal cult film for a while. Like a bunch of cults were watching Nosferatu. Yeah,
a cult,
yeah.
like an actual cult.
Yeah, yeah. An actual cult was watching Nosferatu, from what I heard. I could be wrong, but that's just from what I
Is that
heard.
the
And there were
reason why the
tons of
word cult following exists? Is it because of this movie?
yeah.
Really?
That
Wow.
reason. That might be the reason. I don't know, but yeah, the history behind Nosferatu is very interesting. But Nosferatu as a film, it's not bad. But unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of people who are going to give the film a chance because it's a silent movie. It's very dated, but once you get past that and just watch the movie, it's very great. And there's tons of creepy imagery, especially with Max Schreck's portrayal as the vampire. It's really good. And also, this movie was the film that invented the whole cliche of vampires getting killed by sunlight. Because at the ending, Count Orlok, that's his name in the film, he dies by sunlight, but in the original book, sunlight only weakens Dracula. So that's the movie that invented, vampires dying from, sunlight. But yeah, I don't want to ramble too much about that movie, but it's a good movie. And yeah, the other silent film I want to talk about, which came out before Nosferatu, was the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Taylor talked about it a little bit before me, but that movie is, would say, I would say it's better than Nosferatu because it puts you into like this weird trance. I remember watching it for the first time on my VR headset because I wanted to kind of have like a feel of what it would feel like to watch this in the theater for the first time. And dude, it felt like I was on acid, because it was just like it's like you're going into a totally different world. And also, the film inspired filmmakers like Tim Burton, because Taylor, you know how like everything kind of looks slanted and stuff like that, in the
Yeah.
film. Yeah, it's very similar to Tim Burton's style, especially in the Beetlejuice movies. It's very similar. And also, the main attraction, one of the main characters or main antagonists, excuse me, Caesar. His performance, the actor's performance for Caesar, or is it Caesar? Is that his name? Caesar or Caesar?
Caesar.
Yeah, okay,
Caesar.
okay. I'm just gonna say Caesar. But anyways, the actor's performance as Caesar is very creepy, especially the scene where he when they open the coffin, his eyes start to open. It's very creepy, and also it's one of the early slasher movies as well because the main antagonist Caesar, he actually ends up killing a woman in one of the later scenes of the movie, and it's honestly very graphic for the
Is
1920s.
there like a lot
But
of
yeah,
blood or anything?
no, there's no blood, but he just holds up a knife and he acts crazy like he's playing the killer. Because I don't think you could show blood in a 1920s
No,
film.
I doubt. Because I was
But
gonna say I doubt it. Like 100 years ago, you'd be able to do that.
yeah, but yeah, I would say like the Doctor of Cal of Doc, excuse me, the Cabinet of Doctor Caligari and Nosferatu are the main two horror movies I personally love from the silent era. There's still tons of other horror movies I need to watch from the silent era, but unfortunately, a lot of the movies from that era don't exist anymore because during that time they didn't really care about film preservation, and sometimes they'll even burn films to make more room for other movies. So like the silent movies we're seeing today is only like 20% of those movies from back
I
then.
mean, yeah, like 100 years ago, I wouldn't say the film era became really what it is now until like the 1930s, where we said we should start archiving this stuff. Because in the 20s, it was kind of just seen as like it was like seen as a picture. I mean, a motion picture. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
okay,
I heard that there was like an I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there's like a very early depiction of Dracula that was like I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if it was banned or if they just scrapped it or if the footage was burned or lost or whatever, but I heard that there's like a lost version of Dracula. It's like really that goes far back to like the late 1800s or something or like the early 1900s. It's I have no idea about that, but there's also like another one too. Like there's even like a very early Frankenstein depiction from 1910 has like that same yellow like filter that
I've
Nosferatu and
seen
Caligari has. That I haven't seen much about that, but I have seen there was like a episode of Monster Madness from Cinema Massacre, where it's basically just like a series on YouTube where this guy will just talk about movies from each decade, and it's like a series that has different types of horror movies in each series, and like that was in the first one. And one of the early ones,
I mean that's
and
kind of just
that's yeah.
that's kind of just the problem
Uh,
with a lot of the silent era, like Matt says. A lot of it is just it doesn't exist. It's not like there's really a chance it can get archived. Because I mean, we're talking like 100 years ago. Like, there's no way you're gonna find like some copy in a warehouse from 100 years ago. Like, it just doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, unless you get very, very lucky. Unless you get very lucky.
And good luck getting like a good projector to like
Play
safely,
them, because I mean,
yeah,
we're talking
play
like
one from like
1920s, like the players.
1910 eras.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Two more films I want to talk about real quick before Braylon starts to talk about his favorite movies from that era. Is I forgot to mention the 1925 Phantom of the Opera. Now I haven't seen the full movie yet, but I heard lots of great things about it, and I've seen some of the clips online. And let me tell you something: the clips of this movie are fucking freaky. I believe the actor's name Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney does a really great job at playing the Phantom of the Opera. I really need to give the movie a watch. And another movie I want to mention is actually a lost film, and I believe it's called London After Midnight. It's been lost for a very long time. Until this day, people are trying to find that movie.
I have heard about it. I mean, people have known about it for years. Like, I mean, 20 something years people were talking about it, and people still can't find it. And like I said, it is a silent era, so there's a chance that it could be lost forever.
Yeah, all we really have is a script and a few images of the movie, and that's it.
That's it. And what's interesting about Phantom of the Opera, I'm glad you bring that up. Do you know there's like 3 different versions of that movie?
I've heard, yes.
Yeah, there's like a test screening they did. People hated it. They did a second one, didn't go well, and then there's a third one, which is the one that most people have seen.
1925, there were 3 separate versions of the Phantom of the Opera. The first version was shown to a select crowd that apparently hated the film, causing the filmmakers to re-edit it into the second version. This one had some new scenes added in, but was still received negatively. So they re-edited it again into the third version, which was released and was a big hit. Out of these 3 versions, the first 2 are completely lost, while the third one is just mostly lost.
It's kind of crazy that like 3 versions of one movie can exist, and only the final version is the only one you can find today. Because like the other 2, those are lost. You can't find them, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, and like we said, there's just so many lost silent films out there.
But no, the silent era, it definitely is like a very caveman or primitive era. I mean, like I said, we're talking 100 years ago. Like this is very much. I mean, maybe some of these movies will pop up one of these days, but I highly doubt it, honestly.
Yeah, like these were our like great great grandparents, horror movies. Yeah. All
So
right, so now we're going to talk about the golden age of horror movies, and this is definitely one of my favorite eras of horror. So we'll let Taylor begin.
I love the Universal monster movies and have had an affinity for them for about like 2 years now. Because like most of my fascination with horror usually like stems from like the '60s onward. But I don't know. I rediscovered the Monster Madness catalog, and was refreshed my memory, and I saw Dracula. I rewatched it, and I saw The Mummy and Frankenstein, and I think The Invisible Man is definitely my favorite one. And Dracula's a close second. Frankenstein again is great too. There's also, let me look. There's a list right here. Also, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is another one that I've had a fascination with for a while. Like, I've, found out about it from, like, the shitty NES game, which is atrocious.
I've
Very
played
terrible
it.
game.
I can
Yeah,
confirm.
it's terrible.
I've played
Very
it. It's
shitty game.
awful. If put on an
Very
actual
bad.
NES, it's terrible.
It is very bad. But yeah, but the original story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the guy who's a scientist in his, normal days, and then when I don't know if it's just nighttime or just any. I think it's nighttime. He just like turns into like this evil beast. It's very interesting. And the Wolfman as well. That's probably like my least favorite one. I don't know. I'm the least fascinated with that one. But no, I do have a deep love of these movies.
Yeah, I mean, the Universal monsters, I mean, it really set the bar for a lot of monster cliches. I mean, like, all the Frankensteins you see, all the Draculas you see, a lot of them were based off of the Universal versions. I mean, like, I guarantee with Frankenstein, like, all versions of Frankenstein you see in, like, pop culture and all that, I guarantee was based off of this version of Frankenstein. Same with the Wolfman, Dracula, the Invisible Man. And
Oh,
there's so
definitely.
much about these movies, and Frankenstein is my personal favorite. I would say I don't know. Dracula might be a close second, but I do love just Jekyll and Hyde like as a novel. It's hard to say. I think I agree with Taylor. Wolfman is probably my least favorite. I mean, I don't think it's bad. It's just I never watched that one that much growing up. That was definitely the one I
Yeah,
watched
it's
the
just the
most.
least it's the least cool. I think it's the least cool. I think the other ones are just better.
Yeah, I can agree. I mean, there's so many other movies like that era is just like it to me. It might be one of my personal favorites. I don't know if it's my personal favorite. I would say it's a close second. But what about you, Matt?
Okay, well, I didn't really start to get into this era of horror until I was 19 years old when I was like fresh out of high school. Well, while I was in high school, I did some research about these films, but I really never bothered to actually look into them. I just heard about them on and off. But eventually, I think in Christmas of 2022, I believe, I ended up asking my family for this, and they ended up finding the box set of all the Universal horror movies. And I've watched a good bit of them now. I should mention now the first ever Universal horror movie I ever saw. I remember watching The Invisible Man when I was around maybe like I think 16, 17. I watched it. I thought it was a good like horror movie, but I really never got into like Universal horror, well, the golden age of horror till I was like 19. And now I absolutely love this era because I mean these movies are absolutely gorgeous. Like the sets are amazing. The way the makeup is amazing, especially the makeup for the Wolfman, the Mummy, Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. It's just amazing. And what's really a shame is that not many people know about these movies besides like all the little Halloween references. And I really agree with what James Rolfe said in that one video he made years ago in 2017, is that these movies should have been traditions, kind of like how every Christmas you got to watch the original Grinch, or every Halloween you got to watch that one Charlie Brown pumpkin movie. I can't
It's the
remember what
Great
it's called.
Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, that. Yeah, it's like these should have been traditions, but it's just Universal. I guess they didn't really want to give the rights or something. They just didn't want to, I guess, give the rights out to like these like TV stations or whatever. But yeah, it's just a real shame that these movies aren't like, praised or anything. I mean, it's only praised by people who are into like, more gothic horror movies
Or
or just horror fans.
references or something. I mean, that's how most people probably know. It's just by references you see in pop culture.
Yeah, but I agree with Taylor. These movies definitely set the bar when it comes to like horror movies because they're a lot more graphic than lots of other like horror movies from the 1920s. Well, actually, I take that back. There were some movies from the silent era that are a lot more graphic than these, but still, they set the bar for more like mainstream like audiences. Now you guys are probably going to hate me for this, but I don't really care for the original Dracula from 1931. I like Bela
Really?
Lugosi. I like Bela Lugosi's performance, but other than that, I just think the movie's just kind of meh, in my opinion. But I love the 1931 Frankenstein. Now, my all-time favorite is definitely Bride of Frankenstein. I absolutely love that movie. The Mummy's pretty good, and also I really like the Wolfman. Why do you guys hate the Wolfman so much?
Well, I don't hate the Wolfman. I just find the Wolfman the least interesting. Like, I feel like I get more interest out of Frankenstein and Dracula, especially like Boris Karloff. I mean, I love Boris Karloff. Like, that's why I think I have such a soft spot for Frankenstein.
Yeah. Oh, and I also forgot to mention one of the other ways I watched these movies when I was like, well, one of the first movies I watched when I was a teenager is Creature from the Black Lagoon. I remember finding like a
Yeah,
VHS
that
tape.
I was just gonna mention that. That
That's
one
my
was very
grandma's
interesting.
favorite movie of all time. She loves from the Black Lagoon. And I've seen it because I used to watch. My grandma would sometimes have it on. I mean, she still has the VHS tape to this very day, and I do kind of like it. I do. Like
Yeah.
it definitely is like perfect. And the music for the movie, I mean, the soundtrack is great for a Creature from the Black
Ocean
Lagoon.
Man.
Yeah,
Well, not
but
that,
honestly,
but
okay. I love that music video, but honestly, I don't think I would count Creature from the Black Lagoon. Like, yes, it's a part of the Universal Monsters, but it's not like Golden Age horror. That's more like Silver Age horror, which we'll get into later.
yeah.
But yeah, these movies are great, and I absolutely love them. And also, one thing I want to talk about, which is something James Rolfe also talked about, is these movies. Like these movies were actually like the first like cinematic universe, kind of like Marvel. And if you also really think about it, these are kind of like the early Marvel movies because these were like big events. You know, this was like a big franchise people will come and see, and also um, this franchise maybe it might have the first like crossover because there's a movie where the Wolfman meets Frankenstein's monster. I think it's called Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Yeah, that's what it's
Yes.
called. So I believe that movie from 1940 is the first ever like crossover film where like Frankenstein and the Wolfman fight. It's very similar to what we see now. Like recently with like Deadpool and Wolverine and
Iron Man,
you
Captain
know,
America. It's like it really was like the MCU
yeah,
back then.
it was. Yeah, it was the MCU for our great grandparents.
And I mean, I think they still hold up. I mean, like I said, they're old movies. I mean, they're 90-year-old films, but they still hold up terrific. Like I watch these. I try to make it a tradition now to at least watch one Universal horror movie, and I, have the same reaction each time. And I think more people our age should give it a chance because everyone. I'll talk about it later, but everyone's so into like the current eras and like what's going on now, but people just don't
The
really.
Skibidi toilet in Palestine. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Shut up. But not really are really into these movies, which is kind of sad because like James Wolfe said, it should be a tradition like most of these Christmas movies.
Definitely, it really should. And another unfortunate thing is when you look up these movies, like they don't really have that many. Like all the reviews for these movies don't really have that many review. Excuse me, they don't have that many like views or anything. Because nowadays these movies are kind of just considered like very dated. And I can see why people probably won't be interested in these because they're nearly 100-year-old movies. They're in black and white. They're slow paced. But like I said before, you got to get over that, because like I said, they're beautiful movies and the makeup, for all the monsters is just amazing. And also, one thing I want to mention is that Universal is actually remaking some of these movies. There's actually a trailer for a new Wolfman movie that's coming out in 2025, which
Really?
yeah, that. And also the Invisible Man that came out in 2020. I wasn't really a big fan of that movie. Lots of people like it, but I wasn't really a big fan of that.
I
I
haven't
But yeah,
seen
thought it
it.
there's
was.
actually
Yeah.
I thought it was good, but I didn't like the Mummy. I didn't like that. That was like not good. I
oh
don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
like
okay.
yeah. I found out about that movie through like the Nostalgia Critic and AVGN when they did that collab. Talking about the movie, and it just looked really bad. And then I saw it, and I was just like, yeah, confirm my suspicions.
Yeah, I think the Brandon Fraser movie did it better in my opinion.
I didn't. I missed out on those.
You did. Oh my god. Okay. I have a lot of nostalgia for the two Brendan Fraser Mummy movies. I love those movies. They're silly and dumb, but they're awesome. Yeah, I think those are a much better remake to like the Mummy movies. I haven't seen the 2017 Mummy with Tom Cruise, but from what I heard, it's not that
It's
great.
not good.
And also, from what I heard, when that movie came out, it was that like if the movie was a success, it was going to be like a whole series, and you're going to see all these classic like monsters come back, but the movie sucks. So they're like, oh wait, no, this isn't the first movie. We're actually going to do this movie, you know. And
Amazing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
as for like the 30s, like the Universal Golden Era, it's probably my second favorite. I'll say what my first favorite is later in the video, but I would say it is probably my second favorite era. I just love that era of horror movies, and I think that really set the bar for what a horror movie should be and what monsters are. But do you guys have anything else to say on this era as a whole?
Well, I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say. I talked about how gorgeous the movies were, talked about the amazing makeup, especially for Boris Karloff when it comes to like Frankenstein. So yeah, these are great movies, and honestly, like I said, people should definitely give these movies a chance. They're old movies; they're nearly 100 years old. The pacing isn't great, and one more thing I want to mention is the pacing. Like a lot of modern audiences are more used to like very fast-paced movies, and honestly, I'm just not a fan of fast-paced movies because it just doesn't give you time to breathe. But with these movies, they're slower paced, but it gives you time to breathe and actually appreciate the story. So yeah, all in all, just give these movies a chance because the golden age of horror movies is really good.
Halloween's
Give them
coming
a
up.
chance.
Just try to make it a tradition. See if you like it or not.
Definitely.
Yeah, at least just check one of them out, the one that you think would interest you the most.
Yeah, but do you
And
guys
go
want
from
to?
there.
Do you guys want to get into the next era, which is the Silver Age? So this is from the 1950s and the 1960s. So
What
I
about
guess
the
Let's go.
40s?
we kind of brought up one already, which is
You
Creature from the
we're
Black
skipping the
Lagoon.
40s?
Oh well, Golden
No,
Age
no,
is the 30s and the 40s.
30s and
Wow.
40s.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Silver Age, I mean, we kind of brought up Creature from the Black Lagoon already, but I can bring it up again. It is probably one of my favorites from the Silver Age era. Because, I mean, I've seen that one a lot. I mean, as a kid, like I said, grandparents would have it on. I would sometimes pay attention to what was going on, but it wasn't until I got older. It's like, this movie actually rocks. Like, this is actually a really good horror film.
Design for the creature is like so
Oh, it's terrific.
immaculate and
That's what I love.
interesting and creepy.
That's what I love
I
about
love
like
it.
the Golden Age and the Silver Age. When it came to a lot of the costume design, it was excellent. Like they did it so well. Because a lot of it now is like CGI or whatever. I just love a nice costume. Like you don't see that as much anymore. Like if they make
Yeah, no,
creature
this,
now,
yeah.
the creature's probably gonna be some CGI hybrid or whatever, which I don't find interesting at all. I really don't.
Yeah, no, yeah, the more like shitty CGI and that shitty production that's like forced into the film, the more shitty it's gonna be.
But I
Yeah.
guess Tara, what's some of your favorite movies from the 1950s up until the 60s?
Well, I don't really know many movies from the 1950s that are horror, but like I do know more. So like leaning into the 60s, like Psycho. I haven't seen the full thing. I've seen most of it. I had to watch it in 10th grade for a film class, and I think that as I get older, I grow more of an appreciation for the film and the acting in it. I watched the Netflix show, like The Bates Motel, which is based off the original show. I really liked that, and so I decided to check out the movie. And for most of what I saw, I thought I liked. Not one of my favorites, but something that I do like have an appreciation for. And then there's Night of the Living Dead from 1968, and that movie. I have mixed feelings on. I want to. I'm not gonna spoil it, but the ending, I don't really like the ending. The ending is very kind of just like it just kind of like it just leave very. It's a very anticlimactic ending. It leaves like a bitter taste in your mouth, and it's just not satisfactory, I don't think. But like I like the way it's filmed. I like that it's in black and white. I like the cast of characters. I think it's like the first movie or first horror movie or something to have a black guy as like the lead role, so that's really cool too. But I've seen the movie a few times, and again, that's another movie where each time I see it, I grow more of an appreciation for it. But yeah, that's a movie that I could watch again. I still think it's like not as good as everybody says it is. I think it's like if I had to put it in a star rating, I'd probably say like a 3.5 out of 5. But it's definitely something to check out because it is a very like pivotal point in horror film history.
I mean, I could see that. What about you, Matt? Because I mean, you kind of had Night of the Living Dead earlier. You were showing off your collection.
Okay, okay. I want to say this about Night of the Living Dead before I get into the Silver Age of horror. This movie, I don't really consider it like the Silver Age or the Bronze Age. To me, this is the movie that kind of broke the middle ground. Like, this is the middle ground between like classic horror and horror we know today. This is like the middle ground, in my opinion. That's why I put in the list that this movie just separates it. It was a game changer. This film right here. So, but yeah, Night of the Living Dead. Once we get into like the Bronze Age of horror, I will talk about this a little bit more. It's phenomenal, and also this is my mom's like favorite movie. I remember me and her watched this one time, and it like as a kid, it wasn't really that scary. I just found it very fascinating, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But as for the Silver Age of horror, now the Silver Age of horror was very interesting because this is also known as the Atomic Age of horror when people were starting getting scared about like nuclear weapons creating monsters or UFOs coming to get people and stuff like that. This was a very interesting era of horror movies. And a lot of the movies from this era, except for like the Hammer, like classic gothic monster movies, which I'll talk a little bit about those movies, even though I haven't seen all of them yet, and also the psychological horror movies from this time. Well, sort of pre-psychological horror movies like the Alfred Hitchcock movies, like Psycho. But anyways, most of the horror movies that came out during this time were more sci-fi horror, like The Blob, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, the original The Thing, which is pretty good. There was a lot of like
Snatchers is one of my favorites.
Yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Well, The Day the Earth Stood Still. That's not really a horror
70s.
movie.
No, I'm talking about
yeah,
the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like the 1956 movie, like the original.
I want to see when
Yeah.
you say that, I think of the 70s one because that's
I
like
see.
the most.
I'll get to the 70s one. I don't like the 70s one. The original is the best one.
Also, the original The Fly with Vincent Price. Now, Vincent Price starred in a lot of like great horror movies from this time. Do y'all know who Vincent Price is?
I do.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah. Also, he was in I think it's called The House of Wax, or that's what it's called, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about the
House-
Silver Era so much is this is really the sci-fi. I mean, this is when people were getting into aliens. They were getting into creatures and all that. Like the 30s was definitely more on the monster side with like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy. This movie just like went out full on with like aliens and all that. That's why I really
Yeah, like the Tingler. That's another
Yeah.
one.
And there's even some weird horror movies out there. Like, have you guys seen The Birds from the early 60s?
Yes, I actually have a memory, of that movie. I remember me and my family were on a vacation, and we were trying to look for something to watch. And my dad found The Birds, that movie from that was made by Alfred Hitchcock, playing on a TV channel. And we were like, okay, it's just like an old, movie, so it can't be that scary. We watched it, and it freaked me out. That movie scared the shit out of me.
Like, you wouldn't
From that
expect a
point
movie
on,
about birds to be creepy. It's a little creepy.
yeah, it is. It's actually creepy, Yeah, and especially this is like a movie that's from I believe the 50s or the 60s, I believe.
1963.
1963.
Yeah, lead
a
actress
movie from
still alive, yeah.
1963 about birds. Like you gotta think about this. Like a movie about like birds coming down to like kill people. Like it sounds like such a stupid concept, but it works. It's actually fucking disturbing because it could actually happen.
That's why it's one of my favorites from the Silver Era, because, I mean, it's just the movie you wouldn't expect. Like, oh, what? You hear birds killing people? It's like, okay, but then you watch them, like, what the fuck? And you start questioning it. It's like, can birds actually do that? That's why I like it so much. So, and Alfred Hitchcock is one of my favorite directors. Like, I love a lot of his movies. But
Oh, definitely, yeah.
as a whole, though, I mean, the Silver Era was definitely, I would say, one of the more experimental ones. Because, I mean, kind of like how, like I said, the Golden Age really started the monster genre. I mean, this started like sci-fi horror, which, I mean, we probably see it a couple times today, but I mean, this really was like the era where it was all over the place.
Yeah. Another thing I want to talk about when it comes to the Silver era, there's two things I want to talk about. The first thing is it was a great era for giant monster movies because this was the era where Godzilla came out. Because the one of the big inspirations for Godzilla was the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. I won't get too into Godzilla because we already talked about it in the last episode. But yeah, I would say it was definitely because of like the whole giant monster craze of the 1950s is what brought Godzilla to life, which is really awesome. Also besides Godzilla, there were also tons of other great giant monster horror movies that came out during this time, like Mothra, Rodan. Well, Gamera's not that great, but the Gamera series, it's so bad it's fun. One day we need to talk about it. Yeah, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. He was originally called Ghidorah, but eventually they changed his name to Ghidorah. But yeah, it was definitely a big era for giant monster movies, And also another giant monster movie I want to mention is called Them. It's about like giant ants trying to like eat people and stuff like that. But what I like about a lot of these giant monster movies from this time, well, just monster movies from this era, it's kind of like what if, you know, because there's literally a movie that's about like a giant tree stump coming to kill people called From Hell It Came. Like, there's just a bunch of like what if like scenarios when it comes to like these movies, like Attack of the Giant Leeches. Like, and that's another thing I want to get into is all the tons and tons of crappy, terrible monster movies from this era because the Silver Age, the 50s and the 60s had just so many terrible like monster movies from this era. You know, like I said, like Attack of the Giant Leeches. It was ripped. It was actually ripped on an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Also, the Gamera series. That it's a so bad it's fun series. And what's another crappy movie I could think of? Shit. It's on the tip of my tongue. Okay, I can't remember it, but yeah. And another director I want to talk about real quick from this era who made a lot of terrible like horror movies was Ed Wood. Have you guys ever heard of Ed Wood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Ed Wood, Tim Burton actually made a movie about him from the '90s. You guys should, if you guys haven't seen that movie and you're really into like cult films, you should definitely check that out. It's a really good movie. But yeah, Ed Wood, he made a lot of these like really terrible, monster movies from that time. But they're so bad it's good movies. And his most famous film of all time is Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I've seen it like I think 3 times now, and it's so fucking bad, but it's so funny. It and also about that movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space, it was actually one of the early zombie movies because it was about like, aliens coming down and raising the dead. So it was one of the earliest zombie movies.
No, I mean that's crazy when you think about it. It's just like that's kind of just the reason why it's not my favorite era, just because I mean there was a lot of shitty movies. But I mean some of them are just so shitty they're laughable at least. But it definitely isn't my favorite. But I say when it's at its best. I mean there's a lot of good ones. But do you guys have anything else you guys want to say? Or are you guys ready for the next era?
Ready to jump into my favorite era.
Yeah, I was just gonna
I
bring
think,
that too. But
yeah, I think the last thing I want to say about this era, I think my favorite monster movie from this era is definitely The Blob. I love that movie,
Blob's
the
great.
original Blob.
Alright,
Okay.
now we got the Bronze Age, which is the 1970s all the way up until the early 90s. This is my favorite era for movies. This is when you got
My
stuff.
favorite as well.
You got stuff like Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Shining. Like this really is like one of the most iconic eras, I would say. Like, I mean, you hear so many people talk about this. I mean, some of these movies people still watch to this very day, and we still see Hollywood try to remake them. Not always successful. A lot of them are dog shit. But when it comes to the originals, these are terrific. But Taylor, do you want to start with this one first?
Yeah, I got a lot to say about this era. Okay. So looking at this list of movies and plucking the ones that I have heard of and have seen, I do want to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre first. It is going to be, I think, yeah,
50.
60. 50,
Oh no,
yeah.
60.
It is,
Wait,
it's not
wait,
60.
70s. 50. 50 years old.
Yeah, 50,
1970.
yeah.
Yeah,
It'll be 50 years old, I think, on October, let's see, it says it right here. Um, yeah, October 1st, I think. Yeah. Yeah, on October 1st or whatever, so it's gonna be 50 years old. This is probably my favorite horror movie ever. It's one of the scary factors of it, or the scariest factor of it, is probably the fact that this technically could happen. Where most like horror movies are satirized in fiction, this is satirized in fiction, but also reality because it's so. I know that's a really stupid way to put it, but like it's like hypothetically like the hypothetical possibility of it happening is low, but it could, and that's like a big part of it of why it's creepy. Another thing is that the idea of cannibalism in movies was not like a big popular thing. Seems very taboo, but this is kind of the era where grindhouse movies, which are very, very, very graphic and violent movies, mostly made for shock value. Um, kind of started to like shine. And this movie presents itself as like a very violent and graphic grindhouse movie, but it's not. It's very like light, surprisingly. The kills aren't very gory. Aside from like kind of like the chainsaw kill with the wheelchair, like was probably the goriest one. But there was barely any blood in it. But it's made in a very like desolate farm area. The lovely '70s grainy film filter on it is so great. I love this movie so much. It's so creepy. I love Leatherface's whole like green flesh mask. I love the chainsaw. I love the house. Love all of it. It's very very creepy, and I think that it is like I guess the greatest horror movie ever made in a way. I don't know, but I really love it.
And honestly,
And then there's a oh, go ahead. Yeah.
that's why I would say when it comes to this era, the 1970s, I would say is the best of the three decades, like from the 80s to the early 90s. Because in the 70s, a lot of the horror movies that were coming out, like Texas Chainsaw and the original Halloween, could actually happen. And that's why I think they are some of the best of this era. And you can't. I've talked to a lot of like Gen X, because like I would say this when it comes to a movie that defines Gen X, it's Texas Chainsaw. The marketing for the movie, they told me, was insane. Like they promoted it as like the scariest fucking thing. And I mean, like Taylor says, it's pretty tame by today's standards, but the way they promoted the movie was out there. That's probably why it's still remembered to this very day. But go on.
Yeah, no, it's remembered for this very day for very good reasons because it's a very good movie, but onto other movies from that era like Halloween. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Halloween. The new trilogy that came out, the first one of that trilogy I really like. Halloween Ends and Halloween Kills are just terrible. Halloween Ends I have officially dubbed the worst horror movie I've ever seen. I that was such a fucking disappointment and just such a piece
There's
of
a lot
crap.
worse out there. Trust me.
No, no, I know, but like that's like the one I hate the most. Just like the most disappointing. Just
It was shit. We'll
very
talk about
terrible.
that in the later era, but as for other movies, I mean, we had Nightmare, Friday the 13th, and stuff like that.
We have like The Hills Have Eyes, which is a very creepy movie. It
Oh,
also takes place in like the desert and has like a bald like toxic mutant type creature who's kind of like inbred
oh,
looking. You have that movie. You also have Dawn of the Dead, which is
oh, that is a good
yeah,
one. I love that movie.
which is the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And this movie is probably the best of like or at least in my personal favorite, like of the Dead Living Dead trilogy. It takes place in a mall, and it's one of like the earliest experimentations with like real gore, like really like extensive gore. And if that's not your thing, then this movie probably isn't for you. But for people who really like horror and haven't seen this movie, this is definitely a staple and one that you should check out.
No, I agree. But Matt, do you want to get into more of this? Because I mean, there's so much to this era. Is this your favorite era as well, or?
Yes, this is definitely my favorite era of horror movies because now this era of horror definitely set the bar when it comes to horror movies because this is when special effects were introduced, like real scenarios, like Taylor was talking about, especially with Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, when it comes to Friday the 13th, it was realistic up until part six, where Jason's just a zombie, but I'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, I would say my favorite film, well, my favorite horror movie of all time is definitely Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I remember seeing this when I was around, I think, 13, 14 years old, and this movie just amazed me. It felt like a documentary because of the way it was shot and all the locations, and also the scene where the main character, where they cut her hand to drink her blood, that was actually real. They cut her hand open for the movie because this was a shoestring budget movie. But yeah, no, and it's honestly crazy that this movie is turning 50 years old. That is just
It's
crazy
crazy,
to
and I
think.
would agree. It's my favorite horror film too. Halloween used to be mine, But I think the more I watch it, I mean, I've seen it so many times, I kind of just, know what's gonna happen. Texas Chainsaw, I mean, I've seen it a lot too, but that one I think just takes me way more by surprise. Just because I think, like Matt said, it's just the way they shoot it with the camera and all that. I know it sounds weird, but it does feel like a documentary, like a legit documentary. That's why I think it's the best one of this whole era.
Definitely, it's very disturbing with all the creepy imagery and all the real like animal bones they use to create all the creepy props and stuff. It is just very very disturbing. It's not as disturbing as like later movies that came out after Texas Chainsaw, but like for its time, it was one of the most disturbing films that have come out. And also, speaking of like family members who saw this movie, my uncle he actually saw this movie back in the '70s, but he didn't like it, because he doesn't like horror movies. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is really great. But one of my other favorite horror movies, which I think also like set the bar when it comes to horror movies, is Nightmare on Elm Street. Because most of the slasher icons from this era don't talk at all. But Robert Englund in this movie, he decided that this character, well, I don't know if it was Robert Englund or Wes Craven that decided on if Freddy should talk or not, but his performance in this movie is just phenomenal. I absolutely love Freddy Krueger. I love his like funny remarks and everything about it. And it's cool that we have a slasher icon who actually talks. Because I think besides from like Chucky and some other ones, I'm probably can't remember. Not many of them speak. But yeah, I absolutely love Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a great
The
series.
first
But
one
part
is
two is
great. I don't like part two. Dream Warriors is actually good though. The third one I do really enjoy.
Okay, yeah, okay. I actually saw the second one first for some reason, and I really
oh
like the
yeah.
second one. I think that the second one is one of my favorite for horror movies of all time, and it is my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film. I like the third one as well. I've only seen the first three. I like the third one, but I think the ending sucks. The first one is really good as well, but the second one holds a special place in my heart, and I love the second one.
See, I'm not too big on the second one. I don't think it was bad. I think it's my least favorite of the original trilogy. But the first one is still my favorite. But I think Freddy Krueger is just like one of the best horror icons. I mean, when you think of the 1980s, I mean, you do think of Freddy Krueger. That's why I would say
Yeah, you
it's
think of
probably
Jason or Freddy Krueger? I think Freddy Krueger. I
is
think is the
I
better. I think
now
he's the more better.
and I'm gonna be honest, Friday the 13th, I respect it, but honestly, I'm not the biggest Friday the 13th fan. I actually think it's okay. I'm not the biggest lover of it. I like the
Yeah,
first
me
one. I like
neither.
one and two, but after the second one, I kind of lost interest in it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually watched the Friday the 13th series because like the only movies I watched from the Friday the 13th series when I was like a kid was like maybe part 7 and Jason Goes to Hell and all that. But last year I actually gave like the first few films a chance. The first one up until part 4, and I will say this: that there, I would say 2 to 4 are pretty good movies, but I would say this. I'm not really like a huge fan of that, part of the series. It also the first Friday the 13th movie. It's a good horror movie, but I would say like honestly, it's not really something I would rewatch. But later, once things start to get like crazy, once Jason turns into like a literal zombie, that's when
It got
the
dumb.
series starts to get
Yeah.
fun.
Which,
That's when it starts to get a little
speaking
fun.
of horror movies, I have a hot take of mine. People have gave me flack for this. I don't like Chucky. I've never liked Chucky. Like I don't even like the first Child's Play movie. I always found Chucky just kind of more dumb than he is like creepy. I've never been a Chucky fan, but and there's Taylor right there. But I guess what's your guys' opinion on Child's Play? Because I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it.
The Child's Play is fine. I'm not really like a huge Chucky fan at all, but it's fine. There's really not much I can say about it. Oh, shit. Oh fuck. It's just like a Nikocado avocado fucking video where all his food falls.
I like the
And you just
first
start.
one. I like the first one. The second one's good too. The third one sucks. And then I saw a bit of the fourth one. Didn't really like it. I saw the one from 2013. I didn't see any other ones after that. The one from 2013 is bad, but like there's something likable about it. It's bad.
I
But
just I'm not interested with dolls to life. I've never found the cliche really that interesting. But continue.
honestly think Annabelle is like really creepy. Like I know that's in a different era, but I don't know what it is, but some possessed dolls like I do find creepy because that was always another thing I found creepy as a kid. It was like the fear that my toys are gonna come to life and kill me or something. But back to like '70s horror movies. Now that we're in like the '70s '80s era, we also have to talk about Jaws, which is also like a different kind of horror movie because it's there's not a lot of like aquatic when you I know that like there's a lot of aquatic horror movies like shark movies, but there's not one that's as respected as Jaws.
Yeah, I mean, I got a
And
poster for Jaws. I mean, I
yeah,
can try to
and
describe it.
most people, when you think of horror movies, you don't really think of like aquatic creatures like immediately. That's kind of like you have to sift through the files of horror movies, and then you're like, oh yeah, there's also these. But Jaws is definitely the first one that comes to mind.
Oh, I love Jaws.
I wasn't really a fan of Jaws when I was younger, but I rewatched it last summer, and I think it's a lot better than I thought it was.
I got to see it in the theaters. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. Like they really put
Yeah,
Spielberg on the map. And the effects age
yeah,
pretty well for a almost 50-year-old film. I would say the shark effects age pretty well compared to like what we see now these days.
The
yeah. When
effect, the
Spielberg,
suspense too. The way it pulls you in with its suspense is very profound. It's very good. Um, just the effects, like the way like Jaws like explodes, is good. Like even the effects of the people getting eaten. Like the one scene where he goes underneath and then the dead body with the eye kind of pops out underneath him, like that little like swimming vessel thing. Like that freaked me out when I saw that.
Oh, I did too. I mean, I
I
saw
like
that in
it.
the theater, and it
Yeah.
still jumps me to this very day.
Yeah, it's I hate that. That does jump me. I also I
oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I live like kind of in that area where that happened. Like somewhere. It's
Well,
funny. I live
where it
in
was
that
filmed?
area like in Long Island. Yeah, around that
Oh
area.
wow.
No, not in that area. Like it's kind of far-ish from that area, but it's in the yeah. It's
Yeah,
the same vicinity. You get it.
but
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
that too. But another horror movie from that era that I wanted to talk about too is also going back to like how we were talking about monsters and stuff. There was also like a lot of space horror movies, like sci-fi, and another one that the first one that comes to my mind that I do count as a horror movie is Alien.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not many people count it as a horror movie, Alien, but it is kind of like a horror movie. It's kind of like a new take on the whole haunted house, cliche. I mean, but the thing is, it takes place in space, and they're being hunted down by an alien this time, which is really cool. And also the tagline: "In space, no one can hear you scream." That's fucking hardcore.
yeah.
That is
Yeah, I got
hardcore.
to see that. I got to see Alien in theaters. Like the first time I saw it was like when I was 15. The second time I saw it, again, I saw it a second time. I think it was a few months ago. Okay, that movie is meant to be seen in theaters. Like the atmosphere and the vibrations and the sound. It's so like so much better when you see it on the big screen and when it's all dark and like it feels more isolating. It's really good.
Mm,
Yeah, they did it
yeah.
with my local movie theater sometimes like re-releases old movies, and that was one. And I'm really glad I got to see it.
Local movie theater also now when they opened up again like once the COVID pandemic started to slow down, they were re-showing some old movies, and one of those movies I saw was Jaws. I don't mean to go back to like a topic we kind of already discussed, but I mentioned that when Steven Spielberg was making that movie, he was originally just making a B movie, but he just
Mhm.
made it amazing.
It's too
And
good.
also it was a lot better than the book as well. The book was kind of just it wasn't that great. But yeah, and also Jaws was the first ever blockbuster. If you guys didn't know, yeah. But Jaws, that's definitely one of my favorite, not just horror movies, but favorite movies of all time. I remember seeing it for the first time when I was like around like 10 years old with my mom because that's her favorite horror movie ever. Because my mom absolutely loves Jaws. It's a great movie. But back to Alien. Alien is definitely like I said, it's like a new take on the haunted house cliche. And oh, one more thing I want to mention is now remember how I told you guys that when it comes to the 1970s and 80s, that's when special effects started to get really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Alien is a good example, but also I think my favorite movie when it comes to like, shit, fuck, you know what, fuck it, I'll just ignore that. Ignore that, guys. You know, you should have like a clip of like Nick Ocado like, fucking screaming or something. But
Anyway,
yeah,
continue.
okay. But anyways, I think like the best movie from this era that has some of the amazing, like the most amazing special effects is John Carpenter's The Thing. I fucking love this
Oh, it's
movie.
great. It's
Uh,
so good.
I haven't seen it. I'm gonna watch it probably tonight or tomorrow because
so
that's I really
good.
wanted to see it.
Yeah, it is a remake of the original 1950s The Thing, but honestly, it's very rare that a remake just triumphs the original movie. Like instead of this just being about an alien, it's about like an alien that kind of like transforms and takes over your body, and the special effects are just oh my god, they're amazing. You know, John Carpenter really just he did just such an amazing job with this film, and also the special effects are fucking awesome. But yeah, if you want to see some awesome practical effects, absolutely no fucking CGI, check out John Carpenter's The Thing. It's fucking amazing. And John
I've only
Carpenter, he
seen the
absolutely
original. Yeah.
yeah. John Carpenter absolutely loves the original The Thing, and that's one of the reasons why he decided to make a remake of it. And it was supposed to be a big tribute to that movie, but he ended up erasing that movie from history because not many people know about the '50s version. And the '50s version, I think it's fine, but I love the '80s version a
The
lot
80s
more.
version, like, did it more, I would say. Like, it added way more to it, and to me, it turned out to be the better movie of the two.
Oh yeah, definitely. And another thing about the Bronze Age era of horror, that's when a lot of like Stephen King movies were coming out during that time. Another horror movie I saw last year was Cujo. I started watching like a ton of like Stephen King movies from the '80s. Also, you don't like Cujo?
It's a good book, bad movie.
Oh, okay. I
A
thought the
lot of
movie
the
was fun.
Stephen, yeah, a lot of the Stephen
Have you
King
guys
movies
seen
from the
Tenet?
era are not that good.
You don't even
Oh,
like the
okay.
original It or anything?
No, the original that's 90s. The original it
Yeah,
is good.
well,
I'm talking about a lot of the Stephen King movies are hit or miss. It's funny because like the good ones are like seen as like some of the best like movies ever made, like Shawshank Redemption or Green Mile or that other one that's really good that I don't even remember the name of, but like even Stand By Me, he some of the greatest movies ever made were made like inspired by Stephen King, but also some of the worst movies ever made, like The Langoliers, terrible. Cujo, terrible. Original It is good, but there's a lot of like trash in his catalog. The original Carrie is like it's kind of mid, but there's also like some stuff to be appreciated about it. The book might I kind of like the book better, but like there's some good to be found in Stephen King's you know, filmography, but his bibliography will always like triumph over that.
oh yeah, definitely. Now the original It, I actually do count this as Bronze Age because in the list I counted Bronze Age as like the '70s to the early '90s.
Yeah, basically anything
So
from um early 70s until
like
94 or
the
95.
95 because '96 is when the next era starts.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot from that era. I mean, then you also have Shining, which is one of my favorites. I love this movie. Like, as a
I don't.
kid,
I'm not really a big Shining guy. Like I like Kubrick's other work better, but The Shining. I have an appreciation for that movie as well. I know I keep saying that, but again, I have an appreciation for The Shining a lot because of how the many ways it can be interpreted. I was actually working on a video, um, talking about one of the theories like behind it. I think if you really want a good, quick video that's like the best description of The Shining and the most alluring one, check out Video Game Donkey's video on it. That explains it like perfectly well. Stephen King himself actually didn't like the movie, but
really.
I wouldn't say that I didn't. I wouldn't say that I didn't like it. I would say that I do like it, but it's underwhelming to me, and it's just not necessarily for me. But again, it is a good movie.
I just like it. I mean, like you said, like every person that watches this movie has a different anticipation of it. I mean, people will say this about the
Interpretation, yeah.
yeah, it's like it is one of my favorites of the era. And then if we're counting the early '90s, probably my favorite horror movie of the 1990s, even including like the next era, is Silence of the Lambs. To this day, I think that movie is still fucking terrifying. Like it is
Yeah,
creepy as shit.
uh, it was actually the
1992.
first like to one. It was the first horror movie to win Best Picture. Actually,
Yeah, it's terrifying. Like I've seen it. It's creepy as shit.
I wouldn't say it's
oh yeah,
terrifying, but I think if I were to see that in theaters, it would be that's another one that like I would like to see in the movies because I feel like it'd be creepier there. Hannibal Lecter is one of the most alluring and creepy and interesting horror villains that I've ever seen, and I like the ending of the movie. I have not seen the second one, but I've heard bad things about it. They replace what the hell's her name? Who's the lead role in it? Jodie
Uh,
Jodie Foster.
I think so. Yeah.
Jodie Foster. They replace her in the second installment, and I really hate when movies do that when they just replace the main actor. So I'm less inclined to see it, even if Anthony Hopkins is in it. And it also got really bad reviews.
Yeah.
But you know, that movie is very creepy. It is very suspenseful. It has a very creepy villain aside from Hannibal Lecter. It's a movie that really messes with your head and can keep you on the edge of your seat.
I agree. But what were you gonna say, Matt? Any other movies? You gonna talk about it in the Silver Era, but you kind of wanted to talk about it more about Night of the Living Dead. You said it was kind of like a bridge
oh,
between Silver and the Bronze.
yeah. This was the yeah, exactly. This was like the film that separated, silver from bronze era. It was kind of like the door opening for the bronze era of horror because this was one of the best zombie movies of all time, and it introduced things like a lot more gore and a lot more like graphic scenes and stuff like that. So yeah, I consider this movie the middle ground. And also, if you guys want to watch this movie, this film is also public domain, so you can watch it pretty much just anywhere, on YouTube, Tubi, anywhere. But yeah, I consider this movie like the middle ground. But another thing I want to say about the 1980s, like the Bronze Age of horror, 1970s to early 90s, is I remember how I said in the Silver Age that was kind of like the rise of like all sorts of crappy movies and like crappy monster movies.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the Bronze Age, it was the rise of all sorts of crappy slasher movies like Slaughter High. Night and the Demon isn't really a slasher movie; it's just a weird, fucked up movie. There was also Chopping Mall. There was all sorts of like weird, stupid slasher movies from this time. Another slasher movie I want to see is Sleepaway Camp. I really want to see that movie. I don't know why I never got around to seeing it.
I
But yeah,
was
there's
just at
all sorts of like yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of like weird grindhouse, gore movies from this time, which had a lot of nudity. Like, there's just I can't tell you how many fucking 80s tits I've seen in like fucking all these like weird 80s cult horror movies. Oh, one more thing I want to show you guys before I stop talking about shitty movies. Hold on, let me see if I have it here. I do have it. You want to see some of the weirdest shit I have in my fucking collection?
What you got?
All right, check this out. I have this movie called Slumber Party Massacre, which is it's about a maniac who kills people with a fucking like drill right here, and he goes to like a slumber party and just massacres these fucking like
Is this
girls
like
at
an
a slumber
indie
party.
movie or something? I've never heard of it.
It's a cheesy 80s like indie horror movie about like girls having a slumber party, and also there's just some like very outdated 1980s stuff in here, like the whole like cliche about like boys looking through the window
Oh,
when it comes to like
Peeping Tom. Yeah.
yeah, peeping toms. Yeah, like back then, people made a lot of jokes about it, being like, "Haha, they're just young boys being boys." But now it's just fucking creepy.
I mean, Back to the
Like
Future made a joke, like all those jokes, like Peeping Tom.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know how big Peeping Tom. I mean, I would have to ask my father. He grew up in the 1980s, so I don't know if that was like a big deal or it was just like people found that funny back in the day. But
yeah. I guarantee you, when those kids got arrested for that, the cops were like, "Oh, you're just a young kid. Get out of here." Just gives them a slap on the wrist. Nowadays, they'll be arrested for felony stalking.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually went to a convention in February. It was a horror convention, and the girl I didn't say hi, but the what's her face? I think it was the girl or the guy, one of the people who played one of the characters in Sleepaway Camp was there, and I thought that was cool. And there's another movie that I wanted to talk about because we went to slashers. I also want to talk about because I know that I know Braylon, you don't like these kinds of movies, and I don't either. But the golden turd out of all of them, that's not a turd, but it's a good movie. I think out of all of them is the two movies that you think of when you think of like religious horror movies in the 70s. You think of The Omen and you think of The Exorcist. I don't like The Omen. I think The Omen is boring as fuck and it's really long and the ending is stupid. Like why would you waste your time like just like saying a long ass prayer before just killing this evil fucking Damien kid? It's just a stupid ass ending and a stupid ass movie overall. Like, just when the lady's like, "This is for you, Damien," and hangs herself. I think it's so obnoxious. It's a really shitty movie. And The Exorcist, I like The Exorcist. I really appreciate like the shock value of it of the time. I think it's like made very well. Even if it is boring, I don't think it's boring in a way where it's like, oh man, this is insufferable boring. It's boring because it's slow, but it's also alluring. It's boring in a good way. Um, the acting in it is great. The pastor's in it. The girl in it, I think her name's Reagan or something. Um, not to be confused with Ronald Reagan, but Reagan it uh, as the Pazuzu demon is very creepy. Pretty vile. The vomit scene and the
Oh
crucifixion, the cross scene, and a lot of that. But generally, pretty scary. Um, I say a lot, excuse me. But it's scary. It's long. I ran out of words to fucking describe it, but just go watch it if you want.
yeah, it actually came out the same year as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I believe, or was it 73 or 74? The Exorcist came out.
73.
Oh, 73. Okay, so a year before. But yeah, you see, now I will say this: I haven't seen The Exorcist yet, but I know some history behind it. The reason why I haven't seen it because I have a very religious family. I don't even know when I can watch this
That's
tape.
why I
But
don't like. That's why I don't like it. I'm not watching that shit. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
but
watching it.
yeah, you see, I'm not a religious person, so this probably won't really bother me. Like I've seen much worse movies than this, you know. But anyways, but yeah, a few things I want to talk about when it comes to the history of this movie is that this movie freaked out audiences when they went to see this because it was like one of the first like religious horror movies that really freaked out the mainstream. Like people were running out of the theater and throwing up because that's how like graphic this movie was to people. And also another thing about this movie, there's a scene, the scene where they're trying to, try to help the girl that's possessed, and you see their breath. Like the set, in that movie was actually so cold that you could like see their breath. They actually managed to turn out the thermostat to the lowest setting so you can see the cold breath, which I think is like really cool. But this movie, it's a great movie. Okay, I shouldn't really say that because I haven't seen it yet, but from what I heard, it's a classic. Once I see it, I will give you guys a review. I have to find like a private corner of the room I can watch it in, or probably just watch this with headphones or something. But yeah, anyway, so in conclusion, the Bronze Age of horror movies, the 1970s to 95, is definitely my favorite era of horror movies. Now, unfortunately, the early 90s weren't really that great when it comes to the Bronze Age, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to say about the Bronze Age of horror
I don't think
movies?
I have anything else to say on that. Honestly, I'm kind of interested now to just get into the millennial era because this is definitely a strange era, and it's called millennial era for a reason. This is from the mid 90s up until the early 2010s, and it's called that for a reason because most of these movies you'll probably hear from the millennials that love these movies. And I'm 50-50 on it, but we can dive into it. For starters, Taylor just reminded me with his ghost face mask on Scream. That is like the
Yeah,
definition of a millennial. Like every millennial I know loves Scream. I've never met a single millennial who doesn't like this movie.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I want to say about this movie, remember how I said Night of the Living Dead was kind of like the middle ground between the Silver Age and the Bronze Age? Scream, on the other hand, was the middle ground between the Bronze Age and the Millennial Age. And one thing about this movie I want to mention is during the early 1990s, a lot of the like famous slasher series, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, a lot of those slasher icons were on their deathbeds. Like by the early 90s, not many people were interested in horror movies anymore. Like the slasher genre was pretty much dead at that point. Like Freddy Krueger was killed off, Jason was killed off. A lot of these like slasher icons were disappearing because not many people cared about them. But in '96, Wes Craven created Scream, and it saved the horror genre, and it started a new era of horror movies. And now this is an era of horror movies that I vaguely remember. I was born into the millennial era of horror movies, so yeah. Well, let's just get started with the millennial era of horror movies. The late '90s to the early 2010s. Let's get started.
I guess we should probably just start off with Scream to begin with. I mean, that was the first one. I mean, for a lot of people, this is their favorite horror film. I definitely wouldn't go as far and say it's my favorite, but I do respect it. Like it is like a good movie. I've only seen the first one, but it is like for many, it is a good movie.
Yeah, I've seen some of the sequels, but I would say the first one is definitely one of my favorites. And also, I think this is my girlfriend's favorite horror movie. On one of our first dates, we actually watched this movie, which is really cool. And also, I absolutely love Matthew Lillard's performance in this movie. Matthew Lillard, he's one of my favorite actors. I fucking
He's
love
great.
him.
He's
Also,
really good.
we share the same name, so that's also really cool.
Yeah. But no, I think as a whole it is just like a classic. I mean, like I said, it really defined, like it really helped the slasher era by the time where it was worn out. I mean, it really brought a new thing. And obviously, you'll hear your horror fans like, "Oh, Ghostface is just a guy with a knife," and I'm like, "So is Michael Myers." It's like, it's still good.
Yeah.
But
Exactly. And also what really helped it is that this could happen. There could be like a crazy horror nerd like ourselves going around slashing people up if they didn't get like horror facts right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's kind. That's why it kind of brought into that old, because that's something I forgot to bring up about the Bronze Age is like a lot of these killers like Myers and especially Myers, like they started off as like realistic killers, and as they went on, they got more goofy. Like Michael Myers kept dying, keep coming back to life, and all that. It got really dumb. But I like that with Scream of Ghostface. They really just brought back to it where it was just a guy. And I'm not gonna lie, the idea of it just being like a crazy like horror fan as a kill, I like it. I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah. Speaking of goofiness, we're gonna have to talk about this eventually. Scary
Oh yeah,
movie.
that
We're gonna
that's
have
one
to
thing.
talk.
Also, but
Oh, go on,
oh, go
Jake.
ahead. I know, but I was gonna say with like Scream, also just like the ending, having them being like double killers is also that's like a never been done thing. That was invented a new thing back then, and Scream was always like my favorite horror movie growing up. It is like such a '90s movie. Like when you turn it on, it's probably one of the first like '90s movies that you'll think of when you think of the '90s. It's I don't know why, but for me, it's like I like to watch it during the summer. It's like a summer movie for me. But yeah, but we're gonna getting into like what Matt just said about like scary movie with like the parody. The parody. This was also the era for like the
Horror comedy.
satirical. Yeah, for the comedy
Yeah.
horror. And there's most of the there's never been like a comedy horror that's been like critically acclaimed. I don't think
No,
like
I
that's
mean even
very
Scary Movie,
yeah.
most critics like hate it.
Even scary movies like the number one known like spoof horror movie, and it's not even that good. Like the most of these are just like stoner like comedy shitty movies. Like, um, I the one that my favorite one is probably like a haunted house. Like if we're talking about these kinds of movies, and it's about like Marlon Wayans and his girlfriend moving into this haunted house, and it's just like it's a very crude like um gross out like sex comedy. It's very stupid. It's so like juvenile, everything you can think of. It's very graphic, but it's funny. But a lot of these movies are just like I think there's a lot of people that have fond memories with these movies, like especially like in I think it was in Scary Movie 5. on Snoop Dogg and Mac Miller, like are in that
Yeah.
the cabin in the woods. Like that's funny.
But if it isn't Scream that comes to mind, it's Saw. Saw, I would say, is even
Oh,
bigger than Scream. Like every millennial and even Gen Zers, Saw was their first horror film. I mean, kind of like how
definitely.
in the 1980s, I forgot to bring this up. Like in the 1980s, we got a new Friday the 13th movie like every year. I think with the exception of 2 years. Saw, we got almost a new Saw movie like so frequently. I mean, up until like 2004 to 2010, there was 7 Saw movies.
Yeah. This was definitely, this was the Friday the 13th series for the millennials. Because like I remember being obsessed with the series back in like the mid 2010s. I've watched, I think, all the Saw movies up until I think part 4. I didn't get to the later movies, but yeah, the first Saw movie, it's okay. I will say this: the first Saw movie has its flaws, but if you put all of them aside, it's a very enjoyable movie. And also, I think this movie's about to turn 20 years old. Just
Yeah, it's the
crazy.
20th year
Yeah,
this
it's
year.
gonna turn 20 years old.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
I was I was just like a little 1 year old when this movie
I
came
was
out.
born the
That's
same year Saw came out. Yeah,
cool.
but
Yeah, and also you
Saw.
were born same day and same month as something else happened, in December.
yeah, it's
Like,
shut the fuck up
like
about Chris Chan. I hate
yeah,
you. Anyway, but actually, it's funny. Saw is a weird movie because when I was still like when my mom was still pregnant, with me, she saw Saw in the theater, and she had to leave because she said, "Oh, this shit's fucking nasty." But
yeah, yeah.
Saw
I
was like the first. Saw was like the first movie franchise that I ever got into. Like I said, I was 9
Yeah,
when
I
I
liked
first
Saw.
watched
Saw
one of them.
2. I actually like Saw 2 more than the first one. It's goofier, but I actually like Saw 2 a lot with its
I
storytelling.
like Saw too. I like
After
Saw too,
2,
but I
it's
like the
weird.
first one.
Like 3 is fine, 4 is okay, 5's what I don't remember too much on 5. 6 I actually remember being pretty good. Saw 3D, I hate that movie. Saw 7 like was garbage, but I don't
Yeah, I
Saw
still
3D
need to
is
see. That's the most recent Saw movie.
Saw X, like the new one, is actually really, really good. But Saw is just such a weird
Okay.
franchise because just how many of them there are. There's just so
Yeah,
many of them.
Yeah.
Saw X's story deviates like from the norm, but it still keeps like its like trap tradition. It's violent gore tradition, but it's more. I don't know. It's more. It doesn't feel like a Saw movie, but it is. It feels like just like plot of another movie. It's not in the normal setting, and it kind of gives more of like a different look at like John Kramer before he was like really sick with cancer before he died. And honestly, his death in Saw 3 was so stupid. I think Saw 3 also had such a stupid ending with like fucking Jeff being that impulsive, like that he had to get revenge for all that happened to them. Then he had to kill Jigsaw, even though Jigsaw was gonna fucking die anyway, and he didn't care about it. He cared more about getting revenge than saving his wife and his own life. Like what a fucking idiot! Like it's so stupid. I think that I don't know. I think that ending is like as dumb as like ending in Saw 7, Saw
Yeah,
3D, which is
exactly.
also another not good movie.
Yeah, Saw 7. They just bring John Kramer back out of
No,
nowhere, even
seven
though
is
he
the
died.
worst. Is the worst Saw movie. I haven't seen the ones like the ones after Saw 3D. I've only seen Saw X. I haven't seen like Jigsaw or anything like that. But out of like the originals era, Saw 3D is ass, and especially too that was supposed to be the original ending to the series. It's like what a way to go out. It was dog shit, bro.
Yeah. Okay. I know this is off topic, but we can't talk about Millennium Horror without talking about the found footage genre. We got to talk about this real quick.
Oh, the found
Have you
footage
guys seen
genre.
any?
Yes,
Have
dude.
you guys seen any found footage movies like VHS? One of my personal
I've
favorites from
seen
the
VH.
millennial era.
Yes, I've seen it. It
I've
really
never seen
was the era for
VHS,
it.
but yeah, I've
Yeah, it
seen the
really
Blair
was
Witch.
the big
Yeah,
era for it.
yeah, and the just so you know, guys know, the Blair Witch Project. This is the highest grossing independent movie of all time. This was made on a shoestring budget by just a couple of people with like a video camera, and it made millions. It made millions of dollars. And also, I have like a mockumentary right here because the marketing for this movie was genius because they were putting up like fake, like, missing posters trying to make you think the actors in this movie were real people, even though they weren't. Now, found footage, found footage was a thing before, but it just wasn't mainstream. Like one of the earliest found footage movies out there was Cannibal Holocaust, which was in the Bronze era, but that movie was banned, all over the world. But this was the first. Yeah, this was the first found footage movie that hit the mainstream and made millions of dollars and started up the genre. And throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, there were tons of found footage movies, and there's still found footage movies till this day. And like I said, one of my personal favorites is the VHS era because it's like the VHS series. It's an anthology series that's full of a bunch of like films made by directors. It's all from the perspective of just people with a video camera. And I remember when I was a kid in the 2010s, I was obsessed with found footage movies. Like I was watching all sorts of weird, obscure found footage movies like Grave Encounters and all sorts of other like films. Now, there's a lot of crappy found footage movies out there, and that's the thing. With every era of horror movies, there's always some like crap in between, but yeah, but the found footage genre, it's still going strong now, but it definitely wasn't as popular as it was, in the millennial age of horror. Also, Paranormal Activity. That was definitely another iconic found footage horror movie. Definitely. But yeah, the Blair Witch Project. Actually, my parents actually went to go see this movie back in 1999, and when they came out of the theater, they were like, "Was that a joke?" Because not really much happens in the movie. There's like brief scenes of like creepy things happening, but that's it. But it's just the idea of like these characters are like isolated all alone in like the woods. I think that's what really terrified me when it comes to this movie. It's just like the isolation to it, kind of like Alien. It's definitely one of my favorite horror movies,
You really gotta
because
think
it's
about
it's
it when
very
watching it.
realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah. And another thing I want to mention about the millennial age of horror, there were some tributes to the Bronze Age during this time. There were a ton of like remakes during the millennial age of horror. Like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, the Friday the 13th remake. This was pretty much like the pre-era of remakes.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, there's like a remake every second.
And even though this isn't technically a remake, Halloween they tried resetting the timeline with H2O and Resurrection because they said, you know what, let's just ignore all the Halloween sequels. Let's try making a new one with H2O. Like we have Jamie Lee Curtis again. They did pretty well, but then they decided to make Resurrection, and I think after that everyone kind of just lost interest in it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold up. Me get something real quick. Speaking of Halloween, we need to talk about the Rob Zombie movies real quick. Do you guys know about Rob Zombie?
Yes, like House of a Thousand Corpses. That movie is
Yeah,
is so weird. It is so weird.
yeah. Hold
And
on. I'm
his
trying to
remake
see
of
if I
Halloween
have.
is insane.
Yeah, it's fucking terrible. Okay, I have it right here. Hold up. Let me show this off. I'm just okay. This is just an excuse to show off my collection. Okay, but yeah, we can't talk about it without talking about also the Rob Zombie movies. Like, okay, this is my personal favorite, The Devil's Rejects. I think this is a lot better than this one right here, House of a Thousand
I've only seen
Corpses.
House of
Like,
Thousand Corpses. I don't like it. It's kind of meh.
it's just meh, but this one is pretty good. I
The
highly recommend this
what's
one.
funny
And
about Houses
remake.
oh, no, what's funny about Houses of Thousand Corpses is the DVD menu is more interesting than the movie itself.
Yeah, it is. It is more interesting because the Captain Spaulding, he talks to you and he's like, "You better pick these options or I'll fucking kill you."
You don't quit doing the asshole shuffle and pick one of these goddamn options, I'm gonna come over there and put my boot up your ass.
Yeah, but with the Rob Zombie Halloween, I've met two people that have liked it. My girlfriend actually likes them, and one of my friends says I don't like the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. I don't like them.
I've seen it and it's not that great. I'll also check this out. I have a blockbuster, fucking tape, and not tape, but DVD right here.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen
this is
I've seen
from.
the I've seen the two of them. The first one is boring. The second one is just garbage. The second Rob Zombie Halloween movie fucking sucks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay, I think this is really fitting because check this out. We have Blockbuster Presents the original Halloween and Blockbuster exclusive Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Yeah, I don't like the Rob
Yeah,
Zombie Halloween movies. Cause also a lot I don't
exactly. It's
I was so bored when watching the first one because they kept showing like Michael like as a kid, and I was kind of just so bored. I was like, get on with it. It's like, can we just get to Michael Myers? That's why at least with the original, they showed Michael as a kid for like 10 minutes, right? The first 10 minutes of the movie, and then they move on. This movie, like you don't even see him as Michael Myers until like an hour into the movie. I'm like, I'm just bored when watching it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like we don't need to know everything about like his childhood, like also the characters just suck.
They do. So I don't like the Rob. To me, Rob Zombie. I'm just his music is. I like his music, but I don't like his movies at all.
Yeah, the only movie I do like I said, the Devil's Rejects. That's like the only one. Also, another like a great movie from the millennial era is Trick or Treat. Have you guys seen Trick or Treat?
I have. I've seen that one.
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, that's probably the best horror anthology movie out there.
Definitely.
I
Yeah,
saw it
yeah.
a few years ago. That's one that I'm planning on rewatching soon. Just that scene with the autistic kids on the bus in the costumes and like the guide who like drove them off a cliff. Like that one stuck in my head for some reason.
That's terrible, man. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the parents wanted to kill the kids because they didn't want to take care of them. That's fucked up. Damn, that is fucked up. And also, we forgot to mention The Ring, which is like a 2002 horror movie that's very iconic
Yeah,
as
The
well. The
Ring. I mean,
Ring.
that's another one the millennials just always talk about. Cause I mean, you see that one
Yeah,
still referenced in media today with The Ring.
And that's based
yeah,
off a
yeah.
1998 horror movie called Ring from Japan.
Which The Ring is okay. I've seen it. I can see the creepiness of it, but it's all right. I think I've seen it too many memes based on it that it doesn't really affect me anymore. Like fucking
Yeah.
annoying orange is the onion ring. It's like I'm not
Oh
affected by it.
yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And
That's how I
also the
figured out
annoying.
about the ring.
Wait, what, Taylor?
That's how I found out about the ring.
Yeah, there's the ring. There's a Netflix and kill. It's like I'm not affected by the ring anymore.
Oh yeah, it's oh lord, yeah. It's just like it's been parodied to death. It's just been parodied to death. That's just not scary.
No,
You
but
know.
I think as a whole, the millennial era, it's not my favorite, but it definitely is like the one I always hear people talking about. Like I said, especially it's called the millennial era for a reason. Like every millennial I know talks about Scream, Saw, and all that. And even though I prefer the Bronze era 100% more, I can respect it just like how different it was. Because, like I said, the Bronze era was starting to go downhill like in the early 90s. Like I said, especially with the slasher genre, they botched it really bad. But I will respect the Millennia for trying to bring back the horror genre again. And I think for that, you kind of have to respect for what it is.
Oh yeah, and also the millennial era, it respected the bronze era so much. Like there were so many films in this era that that were big tributes to like the bronze era. That's what I also appreciate about the millennial era. And there's also many iconic like horror movies from the millennial era. And yeah, and I would say the millennial era is definitely the era of horror I'm probably most nostalgic about because that was the era I was born into. And even though I remember the movies very vaguely, those movies just feel like very nostalgic for me. Movies like Scream, Saw, all those like late '90s to 2000s, early 2010s millennial movies. I love them. I like it. It's definitely one of my favorite eras of
All right, so
horror.
the early 2010s horror movies are another era that I'm interested in. This is when we started getting movies like The Conjuring and It Follows. Not again, I'm not really a fan of like religious horror movies, but The Conjuring kind of brought back that, and Annabelle kind of brought back that like interest in that kind of series. And you have other movies like A Quiet Place, which is like that's kind of the mid 2010s era. And you have It, which is like start that's in like the later 2010s era. That is are some of the most like known ones. But then like back to like the early tens. You have movies by like this was like Robert Eggers' opening film because he like that's when he started
God.
directing. He made The Witch, or The Witch, which is another interesting like movie that kind of like takes place in the woods as well. That's like where the main action happens. You have the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which is and you also have the Friday the 13th remake, which is the reintroduction to the famous slasher characters of the 80s, and that which hadn't really seen an installment since like the Freddy vs. Jason era, which is early 2000s. Um, what else do you have? You have also again more shitty possession movies like Insidious and Sinister, and that like I said that kind of takes like popularity again. And also another one that I wanted to talk about that Matt also is going to talk about in a second is It Follows, which is a movie about a sexually transmitted disease that a girl gets, and she has to pass it on to somebody else, or she'll die.
I've seen that one. It is definitely one of the most unique horror movies. Like I wouldn't expect a movie where a girl gets a sexually transmitted disease and has to pass it on to someone.
Yeah, and she sees like ghosts and shit, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah.
Is there anything
Um,
else you want to say?
hold on. I have to look something up. Yeah, I wanted to also talk about like a subsection of horror. This is kind of like a bonus round. I want to talk about like clown horror movies. This is where the clown horror movie kind of gets a resurgence because you have movies like All Hallows Eve, which is well, I like the Art the Clown franchise. You have All Hallows Eve, which is an anthology movie. It's also the resurgence in the anthology. Um, series movie.
Terrifier.
You have Art the Clown in this installment of the series, and then you have Terrifier, which comes out in the mid 2010s, and that is like one of the most that this kind of it's also kind of like a grindhouse movie. That also is a kind of brings back the resurgence in like like super shock value for in terms of gore because that movie is like extremely gory, like somebody gets hung upside down and cut in half, and it's very like brutal. And the second one, it kind of takes like a more softer tone approach, but it's also like still pretty gory for what it is. But the second movie is kind of like it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, even though it feels like an hour and 30. Like it should have been an hour and 30 minutes. Like there was so much fat that could have been trimmed out. And I'm gonna see the third one when that comes out in October 11th. And another clown movies in the early 2010s. You also had like a movie like this one movie called Clown, where this guy gets stuck in this clown suit that he finds in the basement, and it's actually like a spiritualistic like horrific demon clown skin, and he has to get it off. And he tries everything he can to get it off. He tries like shooting himself, but then like that doesn't work. And then you have like again, even House of a Thousand Corpses also counts because like Captain Spaulding is like a clown and like whatever. I haven't seen House of a Thousand Corpses, but that's also something that I really want to see. That might be the one that I'm saving to
It's
see
not that
on
good,
for
I'll tell you
Halloween.
that. Me and Matt were talking
Yeah,
about
no,
it
I know it's
earlier.
gonna be like pretty bad, but like I like shitty horror movies, so maybe I'll have some interest in
And
it.
I guess the biggest one of all is the It remake from 2017. I
Yeah,
mean,
the It
Oh
remake,
yeah,
which is good. Yeah, that's good.
I
this
liked
was
the
the
remake
highest
of it.
of all time.
Yeah,
Yeah, did you guys know that? This, yeah,
yeah.
highest grossing horror movie of all time.
And I like it. I
Crazy.
think it's good. Honestly, like I like the one from 1990. I think this one's better than the 90s one. I prefer
Oh,
it.
yeah, the
It is
'90s one. I
better,
only like
yeah.
Tim Curry. Tim Curry's performance in it was just hilarious, but Bill Skarsgård's performance in this one is actually fucking scary. Like,
No,
yeah,
I love
and it's
the
also
2017 It. Now, it's chapter 2. I'm 50-50 on. I didn't like it at first, but I kind of grew to like it a little more. It's okay. It's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's okay,
I
yeah.
remember. seeing this in the theater. Okay, so I saw both of these movies in the theater when it came out. These movies are very nostalgic for me because you see, we grew up in what I like to call the psychological era of horror movies because like movies like The Witch, Hereditary, The Lighthouse, which I'll talk about The Lighthouse in a little bit. Those are more like what I like to call psychological horror movies, and these are kind of psychological too. Because you know how the clown light messes with your head, and that's what I like about this current era of horror movies we're in. I guess we can either call this the modern horror era or just the psychological era. But yeah, these movies are definitely very nostalgic for me. I saw both of these movies in the theater. I remember all the trailers and stuff. I really love this movie. I remember me and my family, we watched the first 1990 movie with Tim Curry, and then we decided to see this one in the theater. And this is when my movie theater in my hometown opened back up for the first time in 2017. And when we left the theater, we all said, yeah, this put that other movie to shame, you know? Now, when this one came out in 2019, now I remember going to the theater to see this when I was like 16. I actually loved this movie when I saw it in the theater, but when I rewatched it last year, I didn't really like it all that much. Honestly, I mean, it's just an okay sequel. I think it's just a little too goofy.
It definitely
In
focuses
my
more on
opinion,
being like a goofy, fun aspect rather than being like actually scary.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It focuses. It tries to be like. I guess they wanted to make it like more fun than the first one, but honestly, it just wasn't really scary at all. It was honestly more of like a goofy coming of age horror movie. But the first one was actually legit scary. I prefer the first one, but if you want to have fun, I guess give this one a
Give it a
watch.
watch. But I
I think
mean,
you should.
can't
Go
deny it.
ahead.
Go on.
I was gonna say I think you should give the original It a watch, and I think you should give the new one a watch. The original It I watched before, like I watched it. It had to be like 2015, early 2016. This is before like they even announced that they're making a new movie. And I remember my mom told me about it. I remember I was on a walk with my mom, and well, the first time I heard about it was from my aunt, and then I was on a walk with my mom, and she told me about the movie, and I was like, okay, it sounds scary. And then I watched it with her and my dad, and I liked it. It was very long. It was like a TV movie. It was from 1990. It was 3 hours. Um, I think Tim Curry is really great as Pennywise. I think Bill Skarsgård is better. I think the 2017 It is definitely the best movie. It's better. It's very. I think it could have been scarier. I don't think they truly like maximized and like it truly didn't squeeze enough of the frightening juice out from like the original book because I think if they actually like did a perfect interpretation of the book, it would actually be like way more terrifying. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if
Ooh, have you read the
was that.
book? Have you read
Yeah,
the book?
I read the book. I have the book. I have a copy of it inside. It's really bulky and heavy. I got it in like fifth grade. Um, it's really good. The book. I don't know if I'd say it's better than the movie. The movie is probably better, but the book is more interesting. There's a lot of more things that are left out in the book, like that talk about like the mystical turtle thing. Like
Oh,
it goes deeper into like the bullies and how fucked up they are. That Patrick kid. A lot. It's very it's way more descriptive. The book. It just gets into many more
and
like Pennywise eats a baby. Like it's like more fucked up.
Yeah, I did hear about
yeah,
that. That shit's fucked.
yeah, it's pretty disturbing, especially that one scene in the sewer with the gang. But we're not going to talk about that.
Oh, the gangbang.
Oh, oh no, no, we're not talking about that. No, we're
Yeah,
not talking about that. And
that was shocking. That's probably good that they left that out.
what the fuck was Stephen King thinking when he wrote that?
He's
What
probably
the
on
fuck? He must have
cocaine.
been. Yeah, cocaine. It was
No,
definitely the
something about it
cocaine.
was with clowns in the 2010s. I mean, you had the clown sightings in
Yeah.
2016. You had it in 2017.
Yes, I remember that. I remember me being 13 years old watching all these like clown sign videos. And I remember like one time I went up to my dad and we are like, "Hey dad, can we go drive out at night?" And he was like, "Why the fuck you want to go out?" like drive at night, and I was like, yo, I want to see if we can find some clowns. There might be some
I
clowns,
want to
and like
go look for
the state.
Danger. The
Yeah,
clowns.
the state I live in, there were so many people dressing up as clowns to like scare people. In
No,
2016.
I remember in
I remember.
2016. Oh, there was neighborhoods I was in. People were tying balloons to sewers and like walking around and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a news report came out, and this happened in my state that some lady went into the woods and found like a whole cult of clowns like walking around like a campfire. It was fucking
Oh
weird. And
fuck.
also some of the biggest YouTubers during the time talked about the whole clown sightings. Like Leafy is here, but he's long gone now. But yeah, he was one of the biggest YouTubers during the time. But yeah, that was like I would say the 2010s was a big era for like crappy clown movies and just clowns in general. And it really reached its peak with the It movies, but now no one really cares about clowns anymore.
Yeah. And
No one
actually, I
gives
don't
a
even
shit about
hear too many
clowns.
people talk about the 2017 it. Like in the late 2010s, it was everywhere, but I hardly hear people talk
Another thing
about
I
it.
want to talk about when it comes to this era of horror is, well, the psychological aspect. And I think another good example of psychological horror is this 2017 horror movie, Get Out. Now, when this movie came out, it came out during like the really, really bad political phase, that was going on at the time. You know what I'm talking about,
Of
right?
course, like
You know,
this is like mid 2010s. I mean, this is when the country was
like
divided, but that's a topic for another day.
2016.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay, I don't mean to get political, but back then, when I was like an edgy teen, honestly thought this was just like a crappy like political horror movie, but it's actually not. It's a very interesting psychological horror movie, which it is race themed. So, if you're uncomfortable with that, I don't recommend this movie. But if you can like put that aside and appreciate the story of this movie, you'll really enjoy it. It is very good. It's a story about it's a story basically about systemic racism, or I think that's what it's called, or some
Yeah.
kind of different form of racism. And here's the thing, like in this movie, like they don't necessarily want to like, kill people from other races. They want to like get inside their minds and take over their consciousness, which is something that no other horror movie has ever done before. Now, I'm not really a big fan of Jordan Peele movies all that much. I think his movies are kind of just hit or miss. Like with this one movie, I have here, Nope. I don't know why I have this. Probably gonna get rid of this because I don't care for this movie. But Get Out was very good. I really like this movie. This is
Near
one of his like
perfect, near perfection. Yeah.
near perfect. Exactly. Get Out was good. Unless
Yeah,
from what I've heard about that movie was just all right, and Nope was just all right. Some people say Nope is better than Get Out, and I don't
that's
see it.
really a
Like,
stupid opinion.
yeah, Get Out was just so much better. I like Get Out, and this is a good example of like psychological horror movies. Now, the movie does have its flaws. At times, it tries to seem like a comedy for some reason, which I think that's a big flaw with Jordan Peele movies is that he tries to have like a comedic aspect to it, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah. And another movie we should talk about is It Follows. And we talked about it a little bit, but one thing I really appreciate about this movie is that it's very unique, and the whole world in this movie is also very unique because you see, they decided to not let this movie like take place in the past. They decided to kind of have like a world that it's like a whole nother like dimension where like the past and the present is basically together. That's what I love about this movie. I'm a big retro nerd, so it's really cool that they've done something interesting. They have like the past mixed in with the present, because they have like old technology and modern technology together. That's what I love about this movie. But the story is very interesting, and this is a great example of like some of the best 2010s psychological horror movies. And one more movie I want to mention before I let you guys talk is The Lighthouse. Now, I haven't seen a whole lot of A24 horror movies. I really need to. I really need to watch things like Hereditary, Midsummer. I don't know if I'm going to watch Midsummer though. Movies about cults freak me the fuck out.
Fucked up. It's
I
really
don't.
fucked up.
Yeah, but The Lighthouse, I have seen that, and guys, that might be my favorite horror movie of the 2010s. That might be because it is. I absolutely love that movie because that movie messed with my mind when I watched it for the first time. And what's really cool about this movie is that it only has like two characters, and I really love it when movies have like a very limited cast. It really gives filmmakers like a lot of inspirations. By like think about it. It gives indie filmmakers inspiration, thinking they can make a movie just center around two characters. But yeah, The Lighthouse, it's a gorgeous movie with beautiful scenery. It's about these two people who go crazy because they're stuck on an island, watching over a lighthouse, which is based on true stories, by the way. It's all based on true stories about people going crazy on islands, with a lighthouse. But yeah, it's so good. One of my favorite movies of the 2010s. Yeah, but enough of me rambling about this era of horror. What do you guys think?
I do like this era. Like I like how unique this era is. Like the last era was definitely trying to be more like a tribute to the Bronze Age. This era, like when it comes to stuff like It Follows, Get Out, it is so unique. That's why I think honestly might like this era more than the Millennial era, honestly, because just how different it is. I will say, slasher, I don't care for in this. I mean, to be honest, most slasher movies you see made now these days are kind of just more comedy. Especially a lot of those Blumhouse movies like Night Swim. Don't watch that movie. It's like the worst fucking horror movie I've seen. It's fucking dog shit. But
Also, Thanksgiving, that one.
oh, Thanksgiving was so fucking stupid. Like it really was just knockoff Scream, but as a Pilgrim guy. Also, there was Five Nights at Freddy's. That one was alright. I actually didn't mind Five Nights at Freddy's. I saw it in theaters. I thought it was okay. It was okay.
Oh
But
yeah, I need to talk about that later.
we're gonna talk. I'm gonna get to that one in a minute. But I think that's like the unique movies. Like It Follows is probably my favorite, but along with it of this era, definitely.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, and
and
also
also,
the
sorry, go
Babadook. I
ahead.
don't know if anybody ever watched that, but that's another early. That's from 2014.
Oh,
That's another really creepy one.
I've seen that. That freaked me out when I
Yeah,
saw it for the
that's like a
first time.
demon house movie. That movie will like fuck you up. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And also, there's one movie I forgot to mention that I really need to see, and that movie is Talk to Me. Have you guys heard about
Mm,
Talk to Me?
no.
Yes,
Do you guys know about
I've seen that movie. I've seen that movie. Um,
yeah.
I was on mushrooms when I watched that movie, and I was just terrified. It was very creepy movie. It felt like I was like trapped in a void with like whatever, like when she was like trapped in the void, like looking at like everything around her, like near to the end of the movie. I felt like I was trapped in there with her. It was such a creepy. Um, all those A24 movies are so creepy. Like Midsummer is such a creepy cult movie. And that movie just like psychologically rips you apart. Um, like and so does Talk to Me in a Way, but Talk to Me in a Way isn't as intense. It's intense in its own way. Um, I don't know. It's kind of like a Goosebumps, like a novel idea that came to like that was given to A24, and they did what they wanted to with it. Matt, you should go more in detail about like the plot and all that stuff.
Oh, Talk to Me. Well, I haven't seen Talk to Me yet, unfortunately. I heard about it recently. Now, when I first found out about it, I kind of just ignored it because I thought, oh, okay, it's just another crappy like not 2010s, but another crappy like modern horror movie. I kind of just like assumed it was bad. But then I did more research about it, and from what I know, they actually use social media to their advantage. And also, the people who made the movie were the Raka Raka guys. The YouTubers who made like the crazy Ronald
Ronald
McDonald
McDonald videos, which I
videos.
love those videos by the way. That's also got me into creepy shit.
I had no
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
about that.
So, yeah, you didn't know it was created by the Raka Raka guys.
No, but that's awesome. Talk to Me was? Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
Talk to Me. That was created by them, and it makes sense because like they know a lot about social media because like they're millennials, so of course they know about social media and they use it to their advantage in that movie. So I really need to watch it. But yeah, it's crazy that for once some YouTubers actually made something good. It's better than Shane Dawson's like really shitty horror movie.
Oh, that's Shane
Oh
Dawson.
boy.
I never watched
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but it's on my list.
Meow.
Oh
Wait,
no,
what did you say? Meow?
meow.
Anyways.
Poor Cheeto.
Lord. Hey, one more movie series I want to mention. This came out during the millennial era and continued through the psychological era, which is the Purge
Like
movies. Now,
Doom.
this was really
The
big.
Binge and Purge.
Yeah, the Purge movies. Yeah, this was definitely another iconic series in our generation. This is like one of Gen Z's like, biggest
Big
like,
man. I got in there.
franchises.
I got into the Purge around 2016. I really liked it when I first watched it.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. I need to watch the other two movies, the first Purge and the Forever Purge. I need to watch the other two. I've seen the first three, so yeah. But yeah, so I would say like our era of horror was also like really good. I would say it's definitely my third favorite. Third favorite. My favorite is the Bronze Age. Second is the Millennial Age. Third favorite. Oh, wait, fuck it. Hold up. My bad. Bronze Age, Golden Age, Millennial Age, and this age right now. My bad. I forgot to mention the Golden Age. I love
Yeah,
that age
Golden
as
Age is
well.
great. But as a whole, I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
would say this is definitely the most unique era that we've gotten. I mean, it's definitely not my favorite. I think I would go in the order he went. I would go bronze, golden. Honestly, I might put this era above millennial because I feel like millennial feels just more like a tribute. This era and then millennial. But
Okay.
it's hard to say though, because I mean, this era is still going. So who knows when it'll be
Oh
done?
yeah,
But
there's another movie. There's another movie. We gotta talk about Creep.
Creep. Oh.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
I
That's
tried watching Creep. I was bored, to
Lord.
be honest. I was kind of bored by it. I thought it was
I
really
remembered
weird.
Yeah.
it a lot more fondly than I the actual experience of rewatching it. The idea is it is a really creepy movie, and the idea is really unsettling too. Like the guy, like he's dying, so he like calls this guy out to film like a documentary kind of thing of his last days, but it gets progressively creepier, and then you find out in the end that like he does this, and he basically at the end just kills his victims and like films them, and he puts a wolf mask on, and then like he just has a fucking wall of like tapes with people's names on them, like describe, and then basically like it's basically the same thing with every victim, and he comes and gets a new victim, and then the sequel's good too, except like she, the protagonist, like survives and lives at the end. They're supposedly making another one. There's a scene in Creep 2 where the guy gets like fully naked,
Oh yeah,
and like
I've
and that
seen that. He
and
has like his wee wee sticking out and
yeah, and me
everything.
and my dad watched that, and that was like the hardest I've ever heard him laugh. So that was funny.
Oh, I was dying of laughter. Like, bro just whipped it out.
Yeah.
But as for the first movie though,
Without.
even though I don't care for the first Creep, I mean it's alright. I will respect this about Creep. The fact that there's like hardly any music or anything on it, I do like that. Just how unsettling it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. One more movie I want to mention before we conclude the modern era of horror is Krampus. Now this was the first ever horror movie I saw in the theater, and this is a fun, dumb like Christmas movie, horror film. And I absolutely love this movie. Till this day, the movie is still like pretty entertaining. Have you guys ever heard about this movie?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters when I was 10.
Yeah, yeah. I was how old was I when this came out? I was like 12 years old when this movie came out, and yeah, it was like I said before, first ever horror movie saw in the movie theater, and like I said, it's still a lot of fun. Definitely one of my favorite horror movies from like the modern era of horror. But yeah, I just want to mention that real quick. So is there any other movies you guys want to mention real quick?
I don't think so. I think I pretty much got all the movies I wanted to talk about. I mean, we went through all the eras. It's just crazy how much the horror genre has changed from like golden
Yes.
age to like current. It's crazy. It went from being like the monsters to like just creepiness. Like it's kind of crazy how much it's changed for the past like century.
Yes. Yeah, it's so crazy. Like we literally just went through like the whole history of horror movies from Silent Age to now. It's just really crazy. And you know what? I'm really interested to see what the next age of horror will be, because I would say this, like kind of like the slasher movies from the 80s, how that set the bar for horror movies. The A24 films, like the psychological A24 horror movies, that set the bar for horror movies as well. I think that set the bar a lot more higher because those movies really mess with your mind. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what future horror movies can do next, but I'm very interested to see what they'll do next.
No, I agree.
I just yeah. You
But
know, I'm I'm just wondering what would the next generation of horror movies be called by the 2030s? You know, what would that
that's
be
what I'm
called?
kind of curious. But who knows? Honestly, I mean, the horror changes so much drastically. Like, who knows? Maybe there will be like a Skibidi Toilet horror movie. Who knows?
Oh no, dude, no, no,
You know
no.
what? I think that's a
You
perfect
ruined it.
time. I think that's a perfect time to end off the
Done.
review now.
Fucking asshole. I'm done.
Anything else you want to say, Taylor? Matt just left the room. So anything you want to say?
Well, I don't. Is Matt gonna come back?
He's gone, man. He heard Skibidi up though. He's gone.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something. We forgot to talk about. Have you ever seen the Evil Dead movies?
Oh, Matt, get back
Oh,
in here.
Yeah, we got. We
oh,
can't. We
dude,
can't end this off without talking about Evil
oh
Dead.
my god, we did not fucking talk about the Evil Dead movies during the Bronze Age of horror. Damn it.
Yeah, we missed
Damn
that.
it. Damn it. Bro, what the fuck? Okay, let's talk about that real quick, then we can end this. Okay, we're going back to the Bronze Age real quick. We're sending the clock back to the Bronze Age. Evil Dead, let's go.
Go ahead.
You go first.
Okay. Well, I saw the Evil Dead series. I think around the pandemic. It was around the pandemic where I started watching the series, and I absolutely love it. Like Bruce Campbell's performance as Ash is amazing. I saw the first Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, which is pretty much like a sequel slash remake, and Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness is fucking awesome. I haven't seen the most recent Evil Dead movies, like the TV series, the remake, and the new one. But the first Evil Dead, it is so damn good. Absolutely love it. What do you have to say about it, Taylor?
So I saw the first one last summer, and I remember thinking to myself like, because it was NC-17, and I was like, what? Most movies that were like PG or PG-13 back then, were kind of adult movies. Like it was weird. The rating system was weird back then. So NC-17 for the 1980s must have been like super fucked up. So I was like, okay, what's this? And then I see it wasn't as fucked up as I thought it was gonna be. It was more tame, but still fucked up. Like when the tree, I think the branch gets shoved up her ass or whatever. I don't know what happens. It gets raped by a tree or something. I don't know. But like the the gore in it of like the demonic object things, little alien things. Like I find it like really cool, like the stop motion of it, and like the face of the book, and like especially like the camera, how it zooms in super fast, like the camera tricks and angles, like and the speed of it. I think
Oh
is
yeah,
really like awesome. I
I
think
love, I
especially
love
like
the
especially
thing.
the end scene where it just like zooms in super fast in Bruce's face, like it's suspenseful. It's like awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Like the camera zooms in on Ash is awesome. I think Ash is probably
Yeah.
one of my favorite horror movie and main characters of all time. He's awesome.
Yeah,
And
and he's not really established too much in this movie. It's more so like he's kind of seen as the main character, but like he's more so seen as like the last character like that ended up surviving, and he's way more established in the second and third movies.
okay, all right, but yeah, definitely. And also Army of Darkness. I love the line where he says, "This is my boomstick" to all the like medieval people during that time. I
Yeah,
love
that's
that movie.
dope.
That movie is a lot of fun. Like that's when Ash, like in the beginning, Ash was kind of just a guy that ends up in a really bad situation, but in the later movies, he just becomes like an pretty much it's kind of like an action hero, sort of like a horror action hero. But okay, so yeah,
Like a
I think we talked
spiritual
about everything.
Rambo.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah, he's the Rambo of horror movies. Yeah, Sylvester Stallone of horror movies. We can say that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think the last thing I want to say before we wrap this up is if you're a horror fan, there's some like YouTube channels and shows I want to recommend. Now, a streaming service I highly recommend if you're a horror fan is Shudder. Shudder has all sorts of like awesome
Yes,
horror movies on
absolutely.
there. Yeah, and also there's one horror movie I forgot to mention from the Bronze era, Demons. Demons is really good, so check that out. Also on Shudder, there's a show called The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. That's really good. Highly recommend that show.
It's
I
really
love
good, but
Joe.
it also could be really bad. Like there's some really fucking shitty ones on there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I love Joe Bob Briggs like commentary. He was pretty much the original like film critic from back in the day. He did like a lot of like, film commentaries in the 90s, but now he's doing it again and it's really awesome. And I kind of already shouted out some YouTube channels like Dr. Wolfie Cinemassacre, and Brandon's Cult Movie Reviews. Not many people know about Brandon's Cult Movie Reviews, so definitely go check them out. So, is there anything
Yeah.
you want to say, Braylon?
Anything else you guys want to say? I think that was a pretty good episode, all things considered. I'm glad you guys brought up Evil Dead, but hey, at least we got it now. So, but
Yep.
yep. Anything
I
else
think
you
we
guys
got
want to
it.
say?
I think we got it.
I think this is a good way to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you for the very next episode, the season 2 finale of Cinemore
See
Reviews.
ya.
Skibbity
Yeah.
dub.
No, but you know what? I'm done. I'm not doing the show anymore. No skibbity. No, I swear to God, if we get a skibbity toilet like horror movie in the 2030s, I'm gonna kill myself. Oh.
Alright.
Now, how should I kill this so-called movie lover?
Braylon. See, TMNT 3 doesn't understand. While yes, TMNT is a franchise mostly aimed at kids, we as movies give the fans something they love. The filmmakers were dedicated to the franchise and what people loved about it. I gave the franchise that edge again like the original comics, but still being a very fun and interesting movie nonetheless. And even a movie like me, who was definitely lighter in tone and focused on being more friendly and more edgy like my predecessor, I still gave the fans and viewers a fun time and continued what they enjoyed about the series, with fun action, great animatronic work, and unironically funny comedy. While me not being as good as the first, I still felt like a solid continuation to it. TMNT 3 isn't bad because it focuses on being more fun. It doesn't give anyone a favor. It doesn't appeal to the fans by giving them no interesting characters with bland and one-dimensional characters, instead of the interesting characters fans grew to love. And it doesn't even appeal to casuals by having barely any action and comedy that even an elementary student would find cringy. Get him, Braylon. Get him now!
You're not gonna get away with this, Gary. Or TMNT or whatever the frick you are.
Nobody cares. I got him now. I won't. No. 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 Please.
You were always cringe, Gary. Nobody liked you.
And you see that, Officer Jake? Gary was literally doing attempted murder.
Where is he?
Here, let me show you real quick.
So what's the meaning to all this, Gary?
I don't know.
Then why did you try to kill him over some Turtles 3 movie?
Look, Turtles 3 is underrated.
So, you did try to kill him over a movie.
You don't understand. Turtles 3 is a classic that normies like Braylon hate. People like him have ruined the film industry. This is all the fault of the mainstream, trend-hopping, popcorn-munching fucking normies.
Okay, it's off to jail you go, Gary.
No, it's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie.
Tell it to the judge.
Oh, I'll be back. You'll see. One day, I will make my return and strike down you and everyone that you love, Braylon.
Bye-bye, Gary.
Oh, what the heck? Mike! Mike! Get up. Get up. Mike, turn around. Are you okay, man? Okay, you good? What happened? You think you're gonna be okay? Okay. Well, I need to call Matthew to see he's okay. Are you gonna be fine? Okay, I'll be right back.
Right. I need to call Matthew.
I should have got some mild sauce.
What's up, boss?
What the fuck? Wait, what's that smell? Hey, I told you can't do that in here.
What? You told me multiple times not to do
Well,
it.
all because Steve does it doesn't mean you should.
And why? I'm your employee.
No, whatever. How's the business going?
It's dead. I want to quit. I've been doing this all day.
Look, the store's going to be open for a few more days, okay? We might get some other customers besides Steve.
What are you going to pay me more? He barely is a payment. $1 can't buy this.
Look, I got bills piling up. I don't know what I'm going to do, okay?
Well, these things cost money.
You know what? You're barely here. Most of the time, I'm the one stacking the shelves. Where are you?
Doing this.
Jesus Christ. You know what? I shouldn't even pay you at all.
Hey, boss, I need a week off. Boss, I need a week off.
Oh, shit, it's Braylon.
Hey!
Hey, shut up for a moment. I need to take this.
I told you I need a week off, dude.
Okay. I need to talk to my friend Braylon.
And I need my paycheck and week off. I request
Later. You're barely here. Why should I?
What do you need later? And I
Also, another thing. You need to stop that. All because Steve does it doesn't mean you should do it.
He's a convicted criminal.
Okay, well, at least he pays for his stuff here. But look, I got
Barely?
this call.
That thing costs $1. Everybody else can afford that, even me.
You know what? I need to call Braylon, okay?
And I need a week off.
Okay.
So give me that day off, please.
What? Braylon, are you okay?
Well, so basically... And yeah, Gary is now in jail for attempted murder.
So Turtles 3 is really cursed.
TMNT 3 is so bad that it's actually cursed.
Yeah, it was so cursed that it gave me a wet willy.
And you see, if I were to tell the officer that TMNT 3 is haunted, I probably would be in a mental asylum right now.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, there's something serious I need to tell you.
Wait, what is it?
Well, it pains me to say this, but I'm nearly bankrupt and I can't afford to keep the store open anymore. It's just costing me more and more money to keep it open, and I can't do it any longer.
Matt, please don't say that, dude. We'll find a way.
I don't know, man. Steve is in jail, and now I have absolutely no customers. It's probably best to close the store.
There's gotta be some way I can help you out, dude. There has to be. I will make sure that there's a way I can help you out.
Braylon, as much as I want to keep the store open, I can't. I mean, bills are piling up, and I just don't know anymore, man. What the fuck?
Yo, boss.
What?
I need my week off.
You're not getting a week off, okay?
Why?
You're barely here. I've told you.
You know what? If you don't pay me, I'll walk out and get another job.
You know what? You're fired. Get out.
Okay.
Get out of my store. Get out.
Whatever. Bye, loser.
Yeah, I gotta go, man. I'll see you later.
So, am I still getting a week off?
No, you're not.
Ugh.
You're fired. Leave.